kind of crowd here.
Yeah.
Walk in the room.
Need some help? You need some backup there?
Town council work session for October 25th, 2022. It is 3 p.m. We've just returned from Alta Verde 1 site visit. And then we move on to material management fee discussion. Jesse Burley
All right, thank
in the
you.
house.
Who are those trash models?
Oh, that's Dominique and Hayden. Yeah.
Hayden's working for me right now. He's back again.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
And married, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, congratulations. Okay. Mayor, Council, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit more about our material management plan and a portion of that related to cost recovery today. Thank you. So just a quick reminder, you guys saw this slide at your retreat, but the goals of the material management plan for the Conservation District is to streamline efficiencies in our staff time, address concerns that we've heard from the community, implement universal recycling requirements as adopted by ordinance, address the material management goals that we just that you all just adopted in the Sustainable BREC plan, and the purpose of today's presentation, which is to talk a little bit more about recovering the costs of the program that the town incurs on an annual basis. Boy, I thought on a giant screen you could read this a little bit better. Sorry, this is also in your packet, in your memo. But this outlines the operational and materials management costs that the town incurs managing the 10 enclosures that are located in the downtown core. On the top, you can see the revenue, which is really direct, the business payments that are paid directly to the service provider per the contract that the town holds with the service provider. And then we also receive a grant, which is a competitive grant. We do have to apply for this on an annual basis for our glass recycling, and that is to the county's Strong Future program. And then on the expense side, you can see that the town, through facilities, streets, parks, public works, admin, sustainability, all of that together results in about $100,000 worth of costs to monitor, educate, enforce, talk to businesses, enroll them, hold them accountable for their user agreement, things like that. On the maintenance side, we maintain the facilities themselves. So we're replacing broken doors. In fact, our contractor, we had a truck hit another garage door just the other day. We replace locks, we do quarterly cleaning. And that number is based on actuals from the previous year. The actual trash recycling service, this is the contract again that the town holds with Timberline at this time. And then we have a separate contract with Summit Roll-Offs to service the glass. And you can see that the difference here is about $126,000, which would have been the cost in 2021. So we took a run at this, staff took a run at this in 2019 and had kind of prepared a model or a methodology, if you will, to recover these costs, but then COVID hit and we didn't really do the deep dive that led us to this conversation today. But what we are proposing is that we simplify a little bit of what we have going on today with tier 1, 2, and 3 for business types. And I refer mostly to businesses because more than 2/3 of the users are businesses, but I will acknowledge we do have some short-term rentals and some long-term rentals in this district as well, and that do utilize these enclosures. So we're proposing that tier 1 include cafes, office, retail less than 1,900 square feet, and then those residential units I just mentioned. Tier 2 is sort of your medium-sized businesses, restaurants, bars, and your large retail. And then tier 3 would be your larger restaurants and bars at over 2,000 square feet. the square footage, I will just caveat this with when we enrolled businesses in the program back in 2018 and 19, we did have businesses self-disclose this number, and we have refined this a little bit over time. For example, I think at the time Extreme Pizza, which is, you know, now totally a different user than it was back then, but they self-reported something like 5,000 square feet, and their restaurant was really only a portion of that. So we did allow for businesses to say, okay, our restaurant portion is really only X and not the entire facility. But I do want to just acknowledge that we've worked with businesses to adjust that number appropriately for ultimately the waste generation. That's what this program is getting at. Is you're a large restaurant, you're probably generating a lot of waste, and therefore we have you set up in a larger.
Hey,
higher tier.
I know you said it, but I wasn't paying attention. How's the residential work? How's residential work?
So residential, it works the same way as with the businesses, either a landlord or a tenant at the time when we were enrolling everybody and we had done sort of the lockout and reassignment of key cards, things like that. They came and said, hey, we have a unit here. We've used
Okay.
this enclosure, you know, for 20 years since it's
Yeah.
been here.
So it's historical and,
It's historical, and you know, we don't want a bunch of 96-gallon toters all over Main Street
Yeah.
for these residential units that sit above commercial. So they are part of
I
the
get you.
program.
Yeah.
I think that I ran the numbers for Rick. I think there's 50 or 52 residential units out of
Comparable.
240. What?
It was comparable to what you would be paying to contract at
Yeah.
your house.
Okay, cool.
For those residential units, I will say that they do, you know, you do have 24/7 access to these facilities, whereas if you were paying at your single family home in Wellington, you get an option of once a week. You have to set it out, things like that. So there is a much higher access and user rate.
But you
with
have to
these
deliver.
facilities. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that the tiers have sort of been established, this is a working spreadsheet that we have, and I apologize, I don't have the functionality on this slide, or else I'd play with the numbers a little bit more. But bottom line is you take the amount to be recovered. So again, this is the hard costs from the previous year, and then the labor cost of roughly 100 grand, and you plug it into the total. And then you also have the total number of customers enrolled in the program, and those are divided up by tier 1, 2, and 3. So that's how you get these numbers here on the left. Each tier is just assigned we've been using kind of PIF or a multiplier, but tier 1 is a multiplier of 1, tier 2 is 2, tier 3 is 3. And then it works out to the column on the right here would be the annual fee for that business type in that tier for the year to use these facilities. And so moving forward, you know, if the number of businesses downtown were 250 and we only needed to collect 100,000, we can change those two numbers in here and it spits out a different number on the right. But this is kind of the most real-time information that we have for the previous calendar year at this point.
Assuming you're gonna require composting of everyone.
So this does not contemplate composting. This is for the facilities as they exist today: trash, single stream recycling, and glass. Moving forward, the service portion of the material
One
stream.
exception.
Go ahead.
I mean, this also includes additional personnel that doesn't exist today.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So it does consolidate, you know, the work being done across different divisions into one position to manage all of this. Having said that, though, let's see, how do I back up? So if we add another waste stream to the service, then whoops, I'm sorry, previous, I can't click on that, darn it. These line items would change. So yes, it is related to the material stream, but this cost recovery is really just the difference between what the businesses pay for those material streams and what the town is covering for the use of the facilities, basically.
But I also think if there's gonna be a lag period, you know, before we get universal composting, then I think we need to address the disparities of those that are paying to compost themselves. And hence reducing their waste stream by 80% or whatever that number is.
But not getting a discount on the
Correct.
waste stream.
That's a good point.
But I mean, we're not gonna solve that now, but I'll throw that out for something for you guys to think about.
So I think in doing, so if I could use Mikasa as an example, you know, you guys only use the peak 10 enclosure for recycling.
Just cardboard.
Yeah, so just the cardboard piece and the bill that you receive from Timberline for that, it does take into account, you are not paying the full cost for trash and recycling. This is more on the facility side. So really it's, we could look at using the same type of model that we do to, prorate's not the right word, to calculate just your waste stream. But this is really for use of the facility. So if you're using the facility at all, it's not based on the waste stream itself. The waste stream itself is how you get billed by Timberline
Which
and how
is-
we calculate that.
Yeah, which is also not being adjusted. So when we redo their contract, we should address that.
And that's due, I mean, we're redoing that contract too,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
We should take that, I mean, that's a big reduction in waste if they're,
And it's a
Compost.
decent sized investment on the individual
Yeah.
businesses for having, you know, and the compost is on our own property.
Right.
Just- Again, I don't want to try to solve it here, but I would encourage us to think.
No, but
about
if we're talking to them at that level right now, they need to somehow allow that or offer that service.
Yeah.
Because they have not offered a discount to anybody that is composting.
it.
And composting is not cheap.
And I mean, I guess where I'm going, Jess, is, you know, my concern is we can't grow composting when there's this financial disincentive. You know, there's the group of us that do it because we believe in it and we're paying and been paying for a long time. So I'm not bitching about us. But, you know, for haulers to make a go of it, you know, and for Summit Roll-Offs to be able to have a viable compost business, we need to grow it. And it's not going to ever grow unless we address some of the disparities. And so that, I guess that's where I'm coming from more than bitching about the last 10 years where we've been paying for it. It's that's, we're going to keep doing it anyway. But I want to see it grow so it can be successful and we can have a hauler that can actually make some money
Right.
and, you know, but it's going to have to grow for that to happen. And I think we're pretty well stalled out now.
And to your comment, Mayor, this RFP for the new contract beginning in 2023 will have to go out to bid. I don't know that Kristen, I think who is going to be working on that, has had one-on-one conversations with Timberline about this specifically yet. And so certainly we can include it in the RFP, but I'll have to circle back with her about
That'd be great.
having that conversation more directly.
follow up on this, so.
You know,
I mean, it shouldn't be any different than residential pay as you throw, right? The less trash, I mean, the whole theory should be the same.
Well, the challenge is they don't have a way to measure it.
I know, but
By decreasing the size of the trash container, that would.
But
wouldn't that
that's for a group
necessitate-
of businesses though.
But if the mix is appropriate, if you have, you know, X number of those was it tier 3? In that grouping that use the enclosure, you should be able to decrease the size of the dumpster by half, allowing there to be real estate for a compost container. And then thus the prices should go down or be reflected thereof.
Right.
I think one of the problems is, there's a disconnect between what you're gonna do and what Timberline does. And just call them any waste hauler.
Right.
They don't audit at all. And I don't know if in this next contract, the easiest way to do it would be to incorporate their charge into this and charge out everybody on the same. Or if that might just be too big of a pain in the butt for the town but the town charging for a facility while the hauler's charging for the hauling piece, and they don't really mesh very well, I think is,
We talked about that, but
We
there was
talked
a
about this too.
reason we weren't collecting that other, and I can't remember what, James, or. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, we talked about instead of having two different charges that they all be connected. And I'm struggling as to why we talked ourselves off that. I know.
I guess to have, if we're gonna go down the route of having a material management personnel that actually is more intimate with what's going on, they'll do a better job of charging the right thing to the right people
Yeah.
in town than just, Timberland just. I don't know that they ever really pay attention to who's paying what. for
Right,
what. So.
right.
Let us look at this.
Yeah, to me, it seems awfully arbitrary because I have two businesses and can compare. And, I have one where we're tied to Timberline in a town enclosure, and I have one where it's competitively bid. And I can tell you there's dramatic, but when we have the person on staff, I'm happy to share all our numbers
Okay, thank you.
and help with that. So,
I don't have a problem with this part though. Just as a standalone, because we need to take better care of these while we start to transition. I know this is the first step, but I think it's fine.
and I'm in agreement with this. I just want the other piece, the
Yep.
disparity piece, so we can grow compost.
Understood.
Yeah.
So looking down the line here, related to this particular management fee.
I find it, I was telling Carol earlier that I find that the expense of $400 to $1,100 for kind of a cam charge for that enclosure to deal with the abuse that those enclosures take with those trucks smashing into them and locks breaking and, it's being used 20 hours a day, slamming doors and animals getting in there, that's totally reasonable.
Yeah.
So
Plus the-
I'm in favor.
Not to mention the cleanup.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. So now I look to our attorney for a recommendation. So did we just decide that this will come back as an ordinance then?
Yeah, so probably more information than you all need, but we're looking at whether we can move some fees into rules and regs so that they can be more manageable by the administration, but we haven't gotten there yet. So I think that this will probably be a proposed ordinance.
Will you let people know that we're doing this?
The businesses? Yes. Yeah, we will do, well, now that we have the green light, we will do outreach, and we've already drafted. This program itself didn't have formal rules and regs, so we're in the process of doing that as a whole for the program as well. And so we'll have that noticed and in front of you guys as well as this moves forward, but we'll turn this around for first meeting in November.
Yeah, I want to follow up on these questions that they raised and see if that strategy of us collecting everything and paying out changes our approach to this at all. So,
Yeah, we need to make sure that we have good outreach, because if you're in the core, you don't have an opportunity to do your trash any other way.
Right.
So we make you do this,
Mhm.
and now we're gonna make you pay to make you do this. So I think we just need to be sensitive. I think it's the right thing. We need to be sensitive because there will be businesses that
Don't want to pay it.
don't want to pay. And, honestly, a cafe will generate way more than an office does. Shop will do less than a retail. So
So the way that the trash fee is set up, there are more, we don't call them tiers, but there are more categories, and we could go back and divide that up a little bit more. The reason we went this way was frankly just to simplify it. So if you feel like there's enough, tier one businesses and offices are different enough from each other, we can go back to the other
Well, tell me what's a cafe? What designates a cafe as opposed to a restaurant under 1,900 feet?
Yeah. So we were looking at like your coffee shops, like Cool River or Starbucks.
Most of those are restaurants. I mean, they're cafes, but they serve food and they're busy. So having Starbucks in the same category as the NRO's office, I don't think is right.
Then we can go back and
I think cafes should get moved to that
They
second
probably
tier.
generate more trash.
And also they do a lot of disposable stuff.
Yeah.
Plates.
But a lot of them carry out. They're not necessarily eating there, so they're not.
Yeah, but a lot of
generating
them
as much
have-
trash.
A lot of them throw their, I mean, they use carryout material there that gets thrown away, which I think should be something that we ding them, in a different way. I mean, they all use to-go stuff in some of these places that get tossed in their own trash.
Mhm.
They don't offer the opportunity for the most part to have a cup of coffee in a coffee cup. Some you
The
can.
Small local shops do, but not the national chain.
we can come back with some more nuanced tiers related to that as well. That's not hard at all to figure out.
Have we talked about requiring larger restaurants to compost? Or do we want to not look at that until we have?
A lot
better
of them don't
compost?
have options because there's nowhere to put it. If you don't have,
We have to offer it.
yeah, I
You have
mean,
to offer it and it has to be offset against your trash bill. The
I
haulers,
know, but I wonder if we would have more freedom to do that if we could get everybody on the same page and if we'd have some efficiency with those people that you're paying to haul it off if we had more users or something.
well, that's part of my point, but you've got to have somewhere to stage it. You've got to have somewhere to put a dumpster or roll-offs or something. It's heavy. So, you can't roll it a long distance. I mean, the restaurants can to get it there, but once it's staged, those dumpsters, those containers get wicked heavy.
which brings up something that you're gonna have to talk to a hauler about. So for instance, when
Who should be
Summit
Lee,
Roll-Offs,
'cause
yeah,
he
when
has the
Summit Roll-Off
experience.
shows up to dump our compost and they come 7 or 8 times a month. They come and pick it up and that's all they can pick up. There is no, a trash truck drives around town and picks up a bunch of trash. I don't know what happens when there's a lot of compost in town. Is that just all individual trips or do they buy a bigger truck that dumps? I don't know how that works. So
Yeah, or the Copper Mountain model, for example, uses a large compactor where they stage it. So the truck can run around town and
Gotcha.
then there's one location where they can, I believe Copper's is actually a 30-yard compactor, which is really big.
wow.
And that's serviced by Waste Management. So there are, that's certainly something to be aware of. You don't want that 2-yard dumpster
Right.
going to the scrap for 10,
Which is what's
30
happening right now,
restaurants.
right.
Yeah, exactly. You need somewhere centralized.
I
to
would
stage
love
it.
to start working on that. Work with Lee to see if we could put together something like that.
With a compactor?
Yeah, where we have a staging area in the town of Breckenridge for the compost
Or
hauler.
maybe in Vista. Point.
So they don't go with small loads all the way over to the scrap. They can go dump in this larger and then, they're saving a lot of fuel.
We were actually talking about this over at Public Works, sort of the reverse of the Vail delivery zone scenario. It's like,
Right.
instead of dispersing it that way, you're bringing it together somehow. Yeah.
You got any room in Frisco for it?
No.
We can make a deal right now.
Yeah. Speed dial.
NIMBYs.
We'll bring this back, huh?
Awesome. There's a lot of pieces to this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, we have 7 minutes before we start the interviews. Uh, Mark, you have an order you want to go in, or do you, I see we have a couple applicants here.
Yeah, so Erica, we were gonna start with Mike Gillard. He was gonna be a Zoom interview.
Okay.
We could do Susan. She's ready to go.
Somebody. Unless Mike is, if Mike's ready.
Mike's on?
I just promoted him. He's got to accept it.
All
So.
right. You want are the others gonna wait outside or are they gonna
Yeah,
be?
we'd like him to wait outside, so.
About trick questions.
Jeffrey, it's trick
I have some
questions.
trick questions.
Mike?
Hallie Goon was gonna be next, and then they're listed in your package.
Okay. So are you asking the first question?
Sure.
And you're asking the second? You're asking the third?
We all have to ask, everyone has to ask a question.
I wasn't going to because I'm running the meeting. I can do that. I mean,
Okay, you know, I
can you
can
do that? Can you ask number three?
Yeah, I can do.
Yeah. Or do you want to ask different questions? I mean, you tell me.
I'm gonna change
Yeah.
my question a little
it?
bit, but
That's why.
Yes, going.
As long as you ask the same thing to everybody.
Have you applied for anything?
Mike, are you good? Can you hear
I'm
us?
good. I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn you up a little bit.
new ones and 4 for existing.
Where are you?
Santa Barbara Airport.
Really?
It's a nice airport.
Where?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I used to
Looks
work
more
on,
like a,
on San Marcos Pass.
oh, nice. It looks more like a Fred Harvey train station from 100 years ago, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's good.
Santa Barbara.
Mike, thanks for making time. What are we? So as you, I mean, you've been through this a couple times already, so we'll just ask a couple questions and then we'll let you go and we'll have a decision made this evening and let you know either tonight or in the morning.
Great.
Hey, Mike, thank you for your interest in continuing on the planning commission. I had one question for you of if there's any particular aspects of the Breckenridge Development Code that the commission should address over the coming years.
Wow, that's a great question. One of the things I love about town of Breckenridge and planning commission is I feel like there's a constant improvement, you know, kind of a Stephen Covey thing, but they've addressed mass and mass bonus in the historic and conservation districts. I think they've done a great job with the short-term rental work, and I think that's been quite difficult. One thing that does come to mind is some of the design standards are really from about 20 years old or so. And I think that mountain modern architecture is definitely on the way. And so maybe updating some of the aesthetics and design standards could be a good use of staff's time. But otherwise, I think that most things work quite well.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, do you have experience serving on other boards? And why do you want to continue serving on the planning commission?
I have a lot of experience in design and construction, but not on other boards. And frankly, the reason I want to continue is, like all of you, I love Breckenridge. I think that Breckenridge does things quite well. I think there's a lot of opportunity brought by the interest in the money being invested in Breckenridge development. And I'd like to see it done in a really compatible way with the towns and the towns. And then a final reason on why I like to do it, I'm impressed by staff. I learned from them and I think they do a nice job in their presentations in the planning commission meetings.
Thank you, Mike.
Michael, if you were like king of the world, would you suggest the town loosen up the restrictions or tighten up the restrictions? I know planning commission doesn't have, you know, you as an individual doesn't have, you know, total autonomy to do that, but, you know, what are you thinking?
That's a hypothetical.
Well, that's the king of the world is hypothetical for sure. So
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
any delusions of grandeur.
You know, I would, work to, Christie used to say, we need to get the town the best project within the existing development code. And I think that was pretty profound and spot on. If I were king, I would continue to push really hard to get the best projects that we can. Given the improvements and the development that's flowed into Breckenridge, I think that we should be selective and should hold applicants and developers to higher standards.
Cool. Dick?
Yeah. Mike, again, appreciate you serving. Do you have any ties to the development community that could be perceived as a conflict of interest or any other conflicts?
I don't, 10 years ago, I did the restoration of the home on Ridge Street across from the post office, and the designer, the architect was Janet Sutterly, and the builder was Peter Joyce. And I think very highly of the two of them, but I have no financial interest with either of them.
Oh, thanks.
Todd?
Hey, Mike, thanks for serving as long as you have, and it's always good catching up with you. I'm curious, how do you think planning efforts are generally going in town?
Quite well. Again, the initiatives, it's impressive to me how often Mark and Julia and Chris push the staff to bring new initiatives, no doubt raised by council on issues that they foresee and ways to improve, the existing development code.
Great, thanks.
All right. Anything else, gang? Mike, thanks. We really have valued having you on the planning commission, so we'll let you know.
It's a privilege to serve, and thanks, guys. Good luck
Thank
to you.
you, sir.
Take care.
Right.
Todd asked my question. Jay asked my question.
You see how he did that to you?
No.
He did it on purpose, you know.
Oh, is Ally remote too?
Yeah.
Said address Mountain Modern, what else? What was the second one?
I think that's a big one. The Mountain Modern. We didn't used to have that, and it's just becoming a part of the lexicon now. So it's probably time to add some teeth to it.
What was the second piece? though?
Can we get somebody else in here while we're figuring that out?
I'm gonna Snapchat Ally and see if she's under a different name or something. I got like all the lingo.
Not a snap.
He's TikTok.
I know what that, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm on dial-up. I'm still on dial-up.
It's emailing getting everybody.
Yes, come sit with us.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
How are you?
It's been a while.
Like 20 minutes. All right, as usual, we're gonna just ask a couple questions. We'll make a decision this afternoon and let you know either tonight or tomorrow. Great. Jay?
Alan, thanks for serving as long as you have already. And I just had a question about, are there any particular aspects of the Breckenridge Development Code that you feel should be addressed over the coming years by the Planning Commission?
Yeah, okay. I think one is the area of materials. And we talked about this at the work session. I think some materials are advancing, and we could move away from natural materials and replace them with engineered materials that look as good and require less maintenance down the road.
Great. Thanks, Alan.
Mhm.
Hi, Ellen. Do you have experience serving on other boards? And also, why do you want to continue serving on the
Sure.
planning commission?
I'm on the Upper Blue Planning Commission, and so I think in terms of boards or commission, that's all I'm doing right now. I want to continue. I've learned a lot in the past 2 years, and there's a lot more still to learn. And the code, and particularly the historical code, is quite complex. And I think it's just, I'm retired and it's a good way for me to give back to the community. And it's something that I think I'm good at. So that's for you guys to judge, but it's a way that I can contribute.
Thank you.
Jeffrey?
You know, I know you're a MIT Beaver alum. What are some of what's your other history as far as professional?
I worked, I did investment banking right after college, but then worked in telecom for a while. Well, actually, which is an area, I think I spoke to both Eric and you when I first moved here about wanting to help be an advisor on the fiber rollout, because I worked on some rural fiber in the past.
Cool.
And I'm still available for that if you need that. And then I pretty much worked in telecom, consulting some of the large telecom companies. And then the last 10 years before I retired, I had our family had some undeveloped property in New York City. And so we developed that into gallery space. So we had to navigate New York City code and permits and stuff like that, and construction and things like that.
I know a guy that could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not get busted.
Yeah. It was a little different back then, but it was.
Alan, thanks for serving as long as you have. It's great. Alan, do you have any development community, any ties to the development community or anything that could be that perceived as a conflict of interest?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Hey, Alan,
Yeah.
just curious how you think planning efforts are generally going in town.
How I think
How planning efforts are generally going in town.
from the planning, from the code and the development code and such, or overall the larger scale where. Okay. I think it's going, a lot of it is going in the right direction. I think the new the sustainability plan makes a lot of sense. I think the fact that we can make recommendations on things that can be changed is really helpful. I think an example, and sorry to repeat myself, I think we brought it up at the work session, was how do you balance the historical requirements for the town versus our sustainability goals. So, we approved the solar panels or the solar shingles for Breckenridge Dental. And so where's the balance between there? But and again, why I brought up the materials, I think, we have to evolve to meet the needs of the growth of the town and the sustainability goals. And I think the town, the council and the residents are mostly open to that.
Thanks.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for your service so far too. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
We
Thanks for
will
your time.
talk about this evening and let you know either tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
We're gonna do Susan?
He has more.
Oh. That's right, we get some.
I think it's Mark next. Please, sir. It's good to see you again. Thanks for coming with us this afternoon.
Oh, I enjoyed that. That was great.
As usual, a couple of questions and then we'll make a decision this afternoon and let you know either tonight or tomorrow. Jay.
Mark, thank you for your service thus far on the planning commission and, and serving. And I know we all know how much time it takes to out of your week, but I just had one question on if there's any particular aspects of the Breckenridge Development Code that should be addressed by the planning commission over the next couple of years.
It comes specifically to mind, so. I'm new enough at this. I'm still digging through the regulations and the code, so I don't have anything that I suggested be changed or be added to.
Thank you.
Mark, do you have experience serving on other boards? And why do you want to continue serving on planning commission?
I've been on board of directors of the bank. I've been on a board of directors for Architectural Woodworking Institute when I was in that business. And it specifically why I decided to run initially for this particular position is that I was new in town. It's a good way to meet people. It's a good way to understand how the town works, and you're dealing with things that I'm interested in because I'm interested in real estate. So that's really the reason.
Jeffrey. You know, according to Jay and everyone else, it's really difficult. It's a difficult job. Planning commission is just time consuming and all that. Is anything changing in your life that is going to make it more difficult to fulfill the obligations? You getting
God, I hope not.
grandchildren coming along, a new hobby, going to get into skydiving or anything?
No, I don't,
Okay.
I don't think so.
All
You know, it's more difficult at certain times. And I got thrown into this. And the first thing that I looked at for the first meeting was the gondola lots. So that was a huge thing for me to get my head around and really understand where this came from and where it's going to go and all that. So from that point on, it's been relatively easier
Yeah.
as things have gone.
And nobody in town has any opinions about that.
No, no.
It hasn't been a controversial time for the town, right?
Oh, no,
Not at all.
we get very little input.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate you serving. Do you have any ties to the development community or any perceived or real conflict of interest out there?
I don't believe I do. No. I mean, I know some of these people, but no, I don't have any conflicts that I would think would be of any difficult part. And if one came up, I'd certainly recluse myself.
Thanks.
Todd. Thanks. In general, how do you think planning efforts are going at the town?
I think planning efforts are going very well. You know, currently we look at each project and we look at the code and we determine how this fits or doesn't fit in. You know, where I come from, a large metropolitan area, things work a little differently than they do in a small town. And I guess if going back to Jay's first question of me, it would be nice if the planning commission had a little bit more forward thinking where the town is going in 5 years, where the town's going in 10 years. And, you know, perhaps this is input that the council could give to us that we could move a little bit along the way with our perspective of planning. You have a much broader perspective than we do, but, you know, with respect to planning, how do we fit into what the town's going to look like in 5 years, what the town's going to look like in 10 years, and what the town's going to look like in 30 years. So I guess that's the only suggestion that, you know, I might have.
Super. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks for serving.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
From Facebook, huh?
Yeah, I love it.
Do you really?
I do.
Aren't people crappy to you?
No, because I don't engage. I just kind of more social, watching my friends, kids grow up, and yeah, I kind of like it. I don't.
That's a lie. You don't like kids.
No, I know. I don't want to
He
be.
likes other people's.
I don't want to be in the room with them, but I like watching their prom pictures and stuff. I checked out, you know, Helen and her daughter in Europe. It was kind of fun.
Hello,
Hey,
Hello.
have a seat. How are you? Good. Thank you for applying. we're going to ask you a few questions and then we discuss it a little later and have a vote. And then we'll let you know either tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good.
And we're going to start with Jay.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here and having an interest in applying for the planning commission position. Assuming that you've followed planning with the town and been to a meeting or zoomed into a meeting, are there any particular aspects of the Breckenridge Development Code that needs to be addressed over the coming years by the planning commission?
You know, I can't say that I'm sufficiently familiar to really say that at this point. You know, I assume that if I am selected, that one of my roles would be to look at the code and, you know, that's very consistent with my background. And, you know, I imagine I would have thoughts at that point. The only thing that I'm aware of that I think is really good is the trend toward discouraging certain high energy use additions to properties and requiring that those be balanced by other sustainable practices. And I've been pleased to see that.
Great, thank you.
Susan, do you have experience serving on other boards? And also, why do you want to serve on the planning commission?
Well, I'm very tied to Breckenridge. I love living here. I've always, I mean, even when I was working, I knew that this was where I was going to be. And I've seen Breckenridge over many, many years, even though we've had a place here since '89. I actually was coming up in the '70s when I was in school. And so I think that Breckenridge has a unique feel to it. And I think that, you know, it's important to maintain that character. I think that the town really has done a great job of maintaining a very family friendly and not, I don't know how to best put it, but, you know, not too crazy in terms of what's coming in here. You know, we're not Aspen, and I think that's correct. I would not want to live there. So, you know, I feel that with my background, the planning commission is someplace where, you know, I would hope to be able to add value. Now that I'm term limited on the Summit Foundation, I'm looking for another major project.
Awesome. Jeffrey.
Well, compared to planning, the Summer Foundation is a walk in the park. Planning is like a stink. It's a nightmare sometimes. So, you know, you meet, you know, when you meet, the length of the meetings and all that stuff. And there's just like a lot of reading and stuff that you have to do. Do you see anything in your life going forward that kind of will make this kind of a difficult commitment? You know, do you have anything going on? And are you ready for the task?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've looked into it. I understand what's involved. You know, my whole career has required me to do extensive reading and learning, and that's something I enjoy.
Yeah, you're probably better at it than I was. Just be forewarned. It's not a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Jeffrey's our sales guy.
Yeah.
Susan, thanks for applying. It's great. Are you how familiar are you with the town's development code and the comprehensive plan? And do you have any experience with historic preservation?
No. You know, that's something that I would, you know, certainly expect to learn about. You know, apart from my experience as chair of the architectural committee for my homeowners association, and experience that I've had building our house and a few other things, I really don't at this point have in-depth knowledge, but I do think that we're very lucky to have an historic district. I understand that there are serious restrictions on what people can do. But, you know, I know that there have been some projects like the one that Barbara and Phil Gibbs did that have really maintained that look and respected the requirements of the historic district. And, you know, I support that.
Great, thanks.
Thanks for being here, Susan. Curious in general, how do you think planning efforts are going here at town?
I mean, it seems to, you know, just my casual sense of it, I think that it seems to go pretty well. You know, I'm a little bit familiar with some of the BGB projects because my husband has, let's say, in touch with those guys. And so, you know, I think that the town has asked them to do some things that made a lot of sense. But I think, you know, the town isn't holding development totally back either. You know, it's allowing things to move forward, but in a fair and reasonable manner.
Great, thanks.
Right. Thanks for your time. We'll
No
discuss this
questions from you?
afternoon. No, I try not to. I like to listen. He asked my question. for me.
Yeah, he deputized me to ask his questions. So every question I ask comes from him.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have Ally on?
No, it appears not.
Okay.
We let her know how to come in. I know she was traveling today, is what I
Okay.
heard. So, but
Easy enough.
yeah,
All right.
so anyway.
And as you all know, Ian Hamilton backed out.
We don't have a phone
They
number.
tried, they left a voice
We called.
and an email.
Okay, fair enough. All right, and with that, we will talk about this later this evening and move on to planning commission decisions for the 18th of October. Ski area master plan and then Entrada parcel zoning. Any questions, Dick?
You know, I guess first a comment, you know, this is another one where I feel like the abbreviated packets are biting us. You know, there's, you know, I don't know how we can be asked to, you know, approve by consent calendar a master sign plan with, you know, looking for, you know, it's got looking for, you know, 5 exceptions, and we know a couple of them are which are hot issues like sandwich boards in town and that kind of thing. And I just, you know, we aren't able to read the plan and know what we're approving. So it's frustrating because I don't know if we need to call it up or not, but I need to call it up because I can't approve something I haven't seen. So yeah, I intend to call it up for that reason.
Mark?
Yeah, we could, I mean, if there's a few questions we can answer that would help you, Dick, but I don't know if that would satisfy you.
Yeah, I mean, it's the complex. I'm assuming it's complex. The signed master plans for something that big is going to be more than a few questions. I mean, I just think we need to read this stuff. You know, if we're asked to approve it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Going forward, how could we fashion this so that we would get enough information so we could?
I'd like to see us go back to the way it used to be, where we got the full packet and not the abbreviated form, but I don't know. I know there's reason to be doing it this way, but it just feels like it's tough on staff. It's tough on applicants. You know, because a lot of times we call things up, but just because we're uncomfortable due to the lack of information, which is certainly the case here. And, you know, I think it would be easier on everyone if we just had the information, because in a lot of cases, we might not call things up if we had all the information.
If I might, I'll weigh in a little bit. I do subscribe to Tim Berry's previous advice about being careful about having almost like an ex parte or a hearing before a hearing, but there are multiple ways to look at a process that gets you probably where you want to go. So maybe we can spend some time looking at what some other jurisdictions do and see if you want to just have more final say over certain decisions.
I personally would. I mean, I look at Land District 5 for Entrada as well. I would have loved to have read the commissioner's comments, you know, just to see what their concerns were and such. I don't know that I'm gonna call that one up, but you know, we're all trying to learn the development code as well at the same time to be able to do our jobs, and it's helpful to read the comments just from a learning standpoint, if nothing else. And I get it that we don't want to have a hearing before the hearing, but we don't know if we need to have a hearing if we don't have the information to know if we need to have a hearing. So.
Okay, well, the call-up process is pretty unique to Breckenridge. There are a couple other jurisdictions that handle land use decisions that way, but if you allow us some time to kind of dig in and provide some options, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I don't mean to complain. I just, it's, you know, it's just frustrating. I know I hear it from the mayor whenever we call something up, and you know, I also don't like doing that to applicants, but you know, in this case, I feel like we have to. I mean, there's a lot of folks in town that would be, I think they, you know, they're very frustrated with some of the sign stuff going on now as it is, and you know, so yeah.
Other questions? Okay, so we have a potential call up tonight on this one. Are you gonna call the other one up also, or just?
No, just this one.
Okay,
Thanks.
good enough.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, thank you.
Ally is ready to call in now.
Okay. Huh?
Just don't know if she's on yet.
Is she?
She, all right, so we'll tell her that we will do her interview if she, once we finish an item, she needs to get on and wait for us. So let's take
Subdivision code amendment. Okay, we're gonna move on to some legislative stuff, beginning with subdivision code amendment. This is a second reading of the subdivision code lot shape update with no changes. Chris?
I think that's the key word is there's no changes to this bill tonight. So I'd be happy to take any questions or any other comments prior to the hearing this evening.
Right, thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris tonight? This is good to go for second reading? Right, thanks. Beauty. Let's go to Justice Center ordinance for the conveyance of property and site lease purchase in support of for rent workforce housing. This is a first reading this evening.
If that was not the format that she was given, it might be unfair to the other applicants. It's up to you, but.
She was given Zoom as the format. I don't know that we specified that it had to be video.
All in.
It should show up. Oh, there we go.
One phone call listener. There you go. Who's doing the Justice Center piece?
Let's do, we'll get.
Okay, all right.
Mark,
Yep.
will you get?
Can we specify video?
We could,
Let's do, let's
but
just,
we can't do that now. We would have
Oh,
had to do
okay.
that in
Yeah,
advance.
let's just do this like this and then we can move on.
She's been
Hello?
You can hear us. Can you unmute and talk? Ally, if you can hear us, can you unmute?
Good.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there you are. Hi, Ally.
Okay, hi, sorry. I was trying to do it, was saying *6 to unmute and I did it a couple of times. Every time it worked.
Very good. Well, thanks for applying.
Yeah.
No, we'll ask you a couple of questions and then we'll have a discussion about it this evening and vote and let you know either tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't be there in person. My boyfriend and I have had this trip planned and we are in the middle of nowhere driving with our camper. So
Nice.
without cell phone, sir.
All right, we're going to start with Jay Beckerman.
Hi, this is Jay. I had one question on the Breckenridge Development Code, and if there are any particular aspects of it that you're aware of that should be addressed by Planning Commission in the coming years.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Regarding the Breckenridge Development Code, are there any aspects to that code that should be addressed by Planning Commission in the coming years?
Jay, to be honest, I am not super familiar with the Breckenridge Development Code right now. Obviously, I am very interested in the future of our community, and that's why I applied for the Planning Commission position again. It's something where I am really excited to learn about it and hopefully have a chance to make decisions that are going to be good for the future of our community and for the future of the residents of Breckenridge.
Great, thanks, Ally.
Carol?
Ali, do you have experience serving on other boards and why do you want to serve on the planning commission?
Yeah, so when I lived in California, I was actually on the board of my homeowners association. And so I was on that board for, 7 or 8 years, serving in various roles as the vice president, as a secretary, and just being a board member, making decisions for our homeowners association that were hopefully in the best interest of our homeowners in terms of planning for the community, maintenance, and just general day-to-day or operations of our HOA. So that was definitely a learning experience for me, and I enjoyed being part of that process.
how do you think the planning efforts are generally going in the town? Do you think would you suggest the town be more restrictive or less restrictive when it comes to development code?
I think right now that I think our town is, as far as building codes, I think we're probably in a good spot. I think there has to be, like with all things, there needs to be a balance. And so it's a delicate balancing game of having the right amount of restrictions so that you maintain the character of your community, but also not having so many codes and restrictions such that you hinder progress or make things, prohibitive to build a new project. For example, if you have too many codes, then it might take too long or be too expensive. And right now we have a housing crisis. So So you have to have a delicate balance, but then you also have to have things that are in place for the environment, for safety. So there's a lot of things to consider.
Thanks. Ally, how familiar are you of the town's development code and the comprehensive plan? And do you have any experience with historic preservation?
I don't have experience with historic preservation, but I have to say I think I'm a pretty quick learner. That's something I've always excelled at, is kind of being thrown into the deep end and absorbing things like a sponge. So I don't think that I would have any problem learning that. And I think I have a healthy respect for the history of communities. The place that I grew up in, Michigan, is actually a Victorian town. And so we had lots of historic buildings there. And I definitely understand the importance of preserving that heritage of a community. And sorry, what was the first part of the question?
How familiar are you with the town's development code and comprehensive plan?
Again, I've glanced at it here and there. I wouldn't say that I'm super familiar with it, but again, it's not something that I think I would have a problem picking up and reading and understanding and learning.
Hey, Ally, Todd Rankin. Just wanted to, I'm curious, if reviewing an application and you disagree with part of the code, what would you do?
If I'm reviewing an application and I disagree with part of the code,
Yep. How would you handle that?
well, so I guess I don't know, does the planning committee, are they allowed to make exceptions to the code?
I don't think so.
Okay. So if you're reviewing something and it doesn't comply with the current code, then and you're not allowed to make exceptions, then I think you have to work with whoever submitted that plan to make it be in agreement with the code. If it doesn't meet it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Al. Hey, thanks for taking the time while you're driving to
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
chat
Well,
with us.
we pulled over on the side, but it's still little spotty here. So
Have a great vacation. We're gonna talk and vote on this tonight, and then we will let you know.
okay. Yeah. Obviously, I think you guys know that I'm interested in getting involved with things with the town of Breckenridge. And I've seen this opportunity come up twice now. And I think it would be just a really, I'm an engineer. I'm definitely analytical, outside the box, creative, problem solver. And I think I can use a lot of my engineering expertise and kind of parlay that into, a little bit of different background on the planning committee. So I think I probably bring a little bit different background than probably the other applicants to the table. And I think diversity and thought is really important.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's get back to the Justice Center ordinance for the conveyance of property and site lease, purchase and support of for rent workforce housing. For first reading, Lori Best is here.
Good afternoon. I'm sure you reviewed all 170 pages of the the packet.
Of course we did.
Hey, I missed.
Ordinance is basically establishes the opportunity to move forward with the COP process for financing Justice Center. It also conveys a small sliver of the property to the county and the town. So it matches the bulk of the property, which is currently owned by the county and the town as tenants in common. But a little sliver was that Forest Service parcel that we added to the parcel. So it has to be added to the parcel. The goal is to have the COPs issued in December. We're starting to incur some expenses relative to this project. Particularly in November, we will have a down payment on the boxes that's due, which is why the timing to try to have these released in December is important. But Kirsten and Rick and I are available for any questions on the specifics.
What the maximum interest is. So when you see 6%, we don't expect to pay 6. It's certainly much higher than we would like. When we ran numbers with Stiefel in September, time a 20-year probably was in the area of 3.75. A 25-year loan would be just a tad over 4. So they don't see the same correlation when the feds do the interest rates that you see on a regular like residential home loans, but there will be some rise in basis points on this. But they feel like we probably will be paying certainly closer to 4 than 2, which was the one we did before. Which has a big impact on rates, right? So if we're doing, I mean, if it's an $18 million COP, at 4%, you're looking at about around 1.2 payment a year in annual payment on that. So, we can decide up the last minute if we want to go for a 20-year or 25. And I think if we could get 25 to 30 basis points less, it might be worth us to do a 20-year on this one, because the difference on the annual payment was only about 100,000 a year.
I think we should do that.
Yeah.
We can save that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank Kirsten for such a great simplified summary of a COP. Like I needed it to be dumbed down, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
You should really. You should.
I'm not going to take credit for this one because this was cribbed from something Tim prepared previously. So I'm going to blame him for
Tim
how
dumbed it
many
down
pages.
for the last group.
Sure. And what was the? You answered my questions about the term and the interest rate.
Yeah, that's a max in there. So
Are we totally 100% sure the boxes will be delivered when we want them to be?
100% sure. We really don't want the boxes delivered in the winter. And so right now we are on their factory line in like February, March, April. So they should roll off the line right when we want them, bringing
Okay,
them over
so-
here. And they will keep them over there if for some reason we're not ready on site, because, we're probably not going to get the foundations poured this winter. So, when the spring comes, we're going to have to pour foundations before we're ready for the boxes. But yeah, so just to be on their plant line is good right now, because there's a lot of people reaching out to Fading West, and their plant is full.
Oh, are we?
the article, Dick had sent out an article that
Mhm.
actually talked about them. Yeah, earlier, I don't know, a few days ago, right? Or a week ago or something. he
Yeah.
sent it out,
About the Telluride project, and then our
Yeah.
project.
Are we sharing the workload with county and?
On this one, yeah, I mean, the county is, it's their land. They're sort of taking the lead on managing the project, but really it's a team effort. Melanie meets with them weekly, and, everybody's sort of divide and conquer, taking little bits of it, but we were the party that opted to do the financing since they were providing the land.
Elizabeth's going to be out there with a hammer.
She told us that, yeah.
Other questions?
Just to make sure we're talking about it. If for some reason it did go up to 6%, is staff and Rick, are you comfortable with kind of the monthly burn rate and cost there?
No, not a 6%. I wouldn't be.
Okay. Do we have flexibility then if for some reason it bumps up crazy here to kind of be watchful and remodel and make sure that we are comfortable before proceeding?
Oh, yeah, we will.
Okay.
I would be shocked. I don't know what could drive it that much that quick. That's one of the reasons we're staying on track. So we'll close next month.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, we'll close December.
December, yeah.
So we want to close before the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Fed's gonna bump
More, so, yeah.
late December when they said, when's your sort of go, no go?
Yes, yes, of course. We'll monitor that. We'll make a decision based on the rates versus the, the 20-year versus 25-year. And even up to the exact amount we go for, we can vary a little bit at the end when we get ready to issue, so.
Thank you for sending the model over. It looked like it had 13 million in there. Was that, is the
That was
other?
an early version when we were just going to do 13 and we were going to bring some cash.
Yeah,
County
we
was going to
won't-
bring
this
some
will
cash.
Not pencil, Todd.
Yeah, we're going to have to subsidize it.
Yeah.
To get that, just want to make sure that, yeah, that you're comfortable with the amount we're gonna have to
No, and
pencil.
I think those are good. I think that actually paying, having to cover that nut each year, even if it's 200,000 from us, 200 from the county to cover the difference, is a good use of our fees.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that is allowing us to have affordable housing out there that otherwise we'd have to raise rents to cover that. So, yeah.
Cool, thank you. No, I appreciate it. Just want to make sure we're comfortable. Obviously a fan of
Yeah.
the more housing, the better. So thanks.
Other questions? All right, thank you. 3 Mile plan, 3 Mile Island plan.
Glowing reviews.
Oh.
I just came up with that on the spot. I swear to God.
Melted my brain. Truckee.
All right. So state statutes require that we adopt our comprehensive plan basically as a guiding document for to serve as our 3 Mile plan. And our comprehensive plan also recognizes the land use guidelines, which actually provide land use guidance for properties that are outside the town limits. And so if we were to annex anything, it kind of needs to be covered by those lugs. And they are, but we have to do this within a year of annexation. So we do this on an annual basis.
More of a housekeeping matter.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey, for that.
Mhm.
Questions? All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Managers report, public projects update.
Talking about everything was done.
Rough.
We drove
over the
over
bridge
it.
today.
Drove over
It's very
Point,
nice.
they were very happy.
Yeah, it was great.
Sick.
We all picked up our feet. Yeah, to go to the bridge.
It's an old Boston thing, I think.
Yeah.
So yes, projects are getting completed on schedule. Coin Valley does have some architectural work with the stone, the finished staining, and then the guardrail needs to be installed. But we're waiting on some subcontractors to finish that up. I do have a request for approval for you in here with the Excel temporary natural gas storage yard. So Excel approached us to use some land to store tanks. It's going to be liquefied natural gas now, LNG, in order to supplement the system when temperatures reach minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
When's the last time that happened?
They told me it was a while ago,
Yeah, of
but they used the last 70 years of data in their engineering modeling.
course they do.
Of
Because
course. So that determines what the pressure drop will be and how much LNG they need to store on site.
Where has it been stored before? Prior?
They haven't done this before. With the demands on the system now, they don't think they can meet those demands when the temperatures drop. So it's the increase in development that's caused this.
So this isn't temporary. This will be somewhat semi-permanent.
What we're offering is temporary for 2 years, and they need to come with a permanent solution.
What are they
Other-
stored in?
Tanks.
Boxes, like some
Bags.
cardboard bags of gas.
I mean, they're gonna have security on site.
Yeah, so it's like a big propane tank, or is it little things or
Large on trailers.
on trailers?
blue rhinos.
I couldn't tell by the picture of the image.
Well, they've been updating me daily. This project, there will be about double the amount of tanks they're showing here will be required now that they've gone to the 70 years of weather data.
What tanks is it? You're not, where are they showing?
You see these things? This is it.
Kind of hatched.
Oh, those square, they don't, that's just like a square, right?
Yeah.
Consider this a schematic of their layout.
Oh, that's not a real
They've been
tank.
changing.
I think it's-
Is there any other spot to put this, considering we just redid the river and that's not quite the hello to town I think we want personally?
We're offering as a temporary.
Yeah,
Temporary location. They had looked at the recycling center. However, the footprint they need, I don't think is compatible with the recycling center operations.
They would have had to, we'd have lost some roll-offs out there and
They don't want to be in town. They want to be in town. So this was the best location we could come up with. It is adjacent to some of their other facilities. They have a meter set there. They have some transformers. So from that perspective, it's compatible, but no, we wouldn't want to have a tank storage yard long-term.
yeah.
I agree.
That's, yeah, cool. All right. Good enough.
Oh, okay, so this is
Coin Valley.
Yeah.
Highway 9, I'm trying to see where 9 would be up above that.
Lower than 9.
it
Feel like
is
it's
lower. You
in the-
probably look over the top of it, but you might, if you're looking for it, you probably see it.
I don't think most people will notice it.
Yeah.
It'll be fenced.
It'll be fenced.
It's right there by Coin Valley, I think, right? Like
Yeah.
that's where the turn, like you're gonna see it. It's the first thing you're gonna see rolling into town.
So if you take a right, if you're heading south and you take a right on Coin Valley, it'll be on the right.
Mhm.
kind of past the rec path.
It'll be east.
West of the rec path.
West of the path. Yeah, this is an old aerial, so it's confusing me a little.
We'll take them out in the spring.
No, 2 years.
We were going to allow them 2 years. So
Okay.
spring of 2024.
Gotcha.
And that's when we're poised to do the new roadway improvements
s-
out there. So they would have to move for us to
Sit
build the
there
road.
year-round.
Like how they gonna, how are they gonna get them there?
Trailers.
Trailer, then they'll put them in the ground. Do we have any?
They
say-
won't be underground. They'll be
No, but on
sitting
the ground.
above.
Do we have any say on the aesthetics? Like,
Maybe a fence.
the cut, well.
We were gonna go with a temporary construction fence, a chain link fence with
Yeah.
the screening fabric on it,
Yeah.
but it will be somewhat visible.
Nah, obviously it's. We'd be in a tough position to say no, because we can't, this is our customers out there that if we get those temperatures and it hit, they will lose all gas service in the town.
Will they be piping?
But we can really push home your
The temporary nature of this.
desire for this to be aesthetically pleasing, to try to block it as much as possible, so that it's not an eyesore. I think Eric's gonna be meeting with one of the vice presidents from Excel, and we can share those concerns too. They know, I mean, we want to enter into an encroachment or licensing agreement because they'll be using town property for a 2-year period with them, so. We could, it's revocable, that agreement, if they, if we have problems.
I'd feel better with a year instead of 2. Like they can figure out a different place to put it, a permanent solution in a year.
Thing is, they need to be near the main line.
This is a big issue.
Main line, that's why they have to be here. There's really, I think there are very limited places where they can inject into the main line.
Yeah.
This is not like, it's just.
Do you notice the thing sticking out of the ground there?
Yeah.
That's their gas thing. I mean, yeah, they probably, I don't think you want it at the corner of Valley Brook and Airport, which is another gas.
Is there any other alternative option or is this kind of the only decent spot?
This was the best location we could provide and recommend.
Let me ask the question differently. What's the backup spot if this isn't a go?
I don't think there is one, honestly.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, and the 2 years makes sense.
Shannon, is it a huge burden on them? It's not gonna get below 30 degrees for most of the year here. So spring, summer, could we ask them to move so it's not there during the summer?
I could ask them about that, what the burden would be to take the tanks away in the summer and then remobilize for winter again.
Honestly, I think if we do it as aesthetically pleasing, if we have some sort of sensitivity with the fence and all that stuff, we can it's not gonna look any worse than the recycling center. You know what I'm saying? So,
correct.
so
Are you comfortable with the chain link fence, Jeffrey? Or are you, when you say aesthetically pleasing, are you picturing?
well, you're saying a
something
construction
specific?
fence. So it's just
Like-
will you be able to look through that fence or is it kind of fabric on the inside?
It'll be the metal chain link and then we could put that green fabric
Yeah.
on it
Yeah, or I don't know.
versus a wooden fence like we have at the recycle center.
But
Would be-
that's kind of wasteful. At least.
I'll leave
they're
that
metal,
up to
they
you,
can
but
reuse.
I mean, is there any color other than green? I mean, do they only make one
I've
color?
seen it in green and I've seen it in black.
I'll do it green then. I'll leave it to your aesthetic,
As long as it's green, he's good with it.
Yeah. so-
Yeah, other questions?
Yeah.
Everybody okay
That's
with
for
it?
2-year
Why
term.
they asked us, we have no choice. I know, but no, I think we gotta do it.
You could take a gamble that it's not gonna reach
The
minus
tanks
30.
stay
Oh,
in
it's
the
not gonna,
trail.
but Excel's worked with us and
I think they'll be sitting on the
and
trail.
plus we can fill,
There's gonna be,
Seriously.
we can go there and fill our propane tanks, correct?
if your tank can handle LNG, sure.
Okay, good.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we will get encroachment license agreement. That is revocable. So if this is problematic, we will have the power to revoke the use.
Nobody's gonna notice it.
That's what we should put it.
You have questions on any other projects?
Did the roundabout get 100% done?
It's not 100% done. It's 98% done.
How's dam coming?
Dam is looking great.
Pictures are amazing, like with the perspective of like a human person in there.
That's a lot of water in that
A
storm
huge
basin.
project.
A lot of water there, a lot of concrete.
No, dam's going well.
How are they doing on the final pours?
We are on schedule to complete the pours in the beginning of December. And then we're also looking at what early start work we could possibly do in January, February ahead of runoff.
Sweet.
Are those full-size people?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
they're children.
They
It was a
got a
kid's
lot of
tour.
work
With a
done.
vest on, yeah.
They're gonna have all that concrete poured by early December. They've gotten a lot done since our tour. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's great.
They're pushing hard up there. They're doing quite well.
Are we worried about runoff at all this year, or are we sort of in a good place now as far as,
We're in a good place to handle spring runoffs.
so James will not be losing sleep anymore like he has been for the last 3.5 years?
Slightly better sleep. However, it all depends on snowpack.
She says of her colleague.
Everything I'm saying.
All right, other questions
else?
on projects? Great job this summer, Shannon.
Yeah.
You killed it.
good work. Those were some complicated projects.
We'll give you a lot of stuff to do.
Project update that's not in your packet on Milne.
Oh,
So Milne is coming in actually right on budget. There's a $206,000 contingency that's built into their budget that they are not going to need.
sweet.
So Randy Kilgore and his team, they're retiring after this year. And so this phase one improvement that's budgeted for was to go in and stub out some things in preparation for phase two. They're proposing, if we're okay with it, that they could spend that 200,000 contingency and get a lot more work done this year and actually get some of the plumbing finished and some of the electrical, which would probably save them money in the future because they would have, since he's on site doing it now, and then they have less to do in the future, phase two. Seems to make sense.
Construction
I feel like
project that's ahead. Giddy up.
He lives across the street. It's a short commute.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think
to-
it makes a lot of sense.
All right, we'll let them know.
I knew they were gonna push more of this project in. Are you handling that?
Sure, I'm the only one here, so let me know.
She's
Going
in
Turkey?
today and everything.
Who is he?
He's in Turkey.
Oh, really? Thanksgiving.
Questions on the traffic counts? Questions or observations on the traffic counts, anyone? All right. Sustainability plan update. You got anything about that?
I do not.
Okay.
I don't see it in the packet either.
It's just a
Yeah, we
blank.
don't
It's
have
a
any update today.
placeholder. Okay. Shannon, thank you so much. Housing and childcare update.
Minutes in your packet for housing committee meetings and also childcare committee meetings. I don't know if anybody had any questions on the minutes.
No questions, but I did call Dick today to let him know that my my desire for the Stilson lot is waning. Don't really not, we got a lot of projects going on right now. And with rates where they are, I don't want to jump into another one too fast here. So I wanted to let Dick know because he's on the housing and I didn't talk to Todd about it, but now he knows that I am really not, I'm not terribly excited about it at the moment. So.
And Eric and I talked and, you know, I guess I expressed a little different perspective. I mean, I think we need to be careful to make sure that project works where it is. And, but I think it's the perfect spot. You know, if we're prioritizing projects, there might be others that step away from if we needed to, as opposed to this one.
I agree with, not to get between you two titans, but I agree with Eric. I mean, I think, I'm not saying, you know, put a fork in it, but I think kind of wait, slow it down, see what happens with the rates, see what happens with the economy, with everything. It's just, you know, we're just spending a lot of money and I think we'll be fine, but I'm just a little bit reticent about our future.
It sort of gets me to something that we have talked about in the past and haven't for a long time because rates have been historically low. But we used to talk quite a bit about what a rate jump does to affordability on a project. And it would be great if you could dredge some of that old information up to sort of give us a little bit of info on how rates affect affordability. You know, we oftentimes talk about, you know, what you do to your house and how much realtors charge. But now that rates are really climbing back up to a more traditional thing, it will make things less affordable as we build them. And I think we need to be really aware. We used to have these discussions about, are we saddling people with too much at certain rates? And I'd like to revisit that, you know, while the rate structure is headed this way, especially with a couple more Fed meetings and at least 1.5 point. What do you think, Todd?
And I'm hearing 3/4 of a point in November and maybe more down the road.
So I think we need to just be aware as a council, as we're pushing projects ahead, what you do to prospective buyers. Now, this is not the rental market because we can absorb that like we're probably going to have to at the Justice Center. We can absorb that and still have livable rent for people. But as we move into this for sale market, I get a little concerned. So.
Yeah, the rest of us not on the committee haven't seen any of the potential proposals. And I know especially Stilson Block 11, that's some of the last big chunks of land that we've banked. We want to be very strategic because it's going to be there for a long, long time once we go ahead. All our projects now, however, are that low AMI rentals. So we do need to continue to think about those for purchase homes, duplexes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Eric's got a great point. I mean, the affordability is going to be tested, but we can also buy down the for sale too, just like the rental. I mean, that's likely what we're going to have to do for all of our housing projects, whether they're for sale or for rent, is to invest a little more in buying them down to an affordable place due to the interest rate. So, I mean, it is a good point. It's an analysis piece we want to look at because we certainly want them affordable, but you know, when I look through the projects that we do have going, we do have a lot. And I've definitely pulled back on the scope and size of that one in my view. But I still think it's a very important project. And you know, if we needed to drop something, that I'm not sure that would be the one I would want to drop. I could think of others that are a little more challenging that that might make sense to fall off. We really need some more for sale inventory. We're losing talent in town. We need places for larger families that are growing to move up, and we need, you know, entry level as well. So I appreciate you bringing it up. It's always good to have these discussions, but yeah, we'll keep talking about it.
I'd also like to see from Dave, you know, kind of where our debt to revenue ratios are, and we're not just kind of like a feeling of where we are, but actually numbers of kind of where we're sitting on our debt and what that is like compared to other communities like ours, just so that we have a better idea of kind of.
We don't have the comparison data, but
I'd love just, and like Dick said, I think it's important to prioritize. Anecdotally speaking, I know that people are having trouble renting their apartments that have been rented for, you know, decades, right? And there's just not a ton of people beating down the door, but how many people come to me and, you know, asking for another Valley Brook, another Wellington, another Lincoln Park, a place where they can actually hang their hat and call home. And it's not about making money or being wealthy or making it rich off a unit. It's just be able to put roots in the ground.
Quality of life.
Sure is.
Well, we will be back in November with some, you can look at some layouts, and we'll hopefully have a cost per door. At least we can start talking, and then we can also identify if we are projecting the sale price of these to be X, given the rates, where is that really affordable to? Because you're right. I mean, with the rates, they're not affordable to the target that we might be shooting for, but we'd have to up our contribution per door. But we can go through some of that at our November meeting.
Excellent.
That'd be good.
Just to piggyback on here, and I agree, Eric, on being mindful of, you know, making sure Rick can sleep at night. Like that's important as we're managing debt and the revenue piece and watching interest rates here so that everybody can sleep, right? We're making smart and prudent financial decisions. Tied into having a housing crisis in the community, you know, and on the drive back from Alta Verde, it kind of hit me in the car there. There's been incredible investment in housing in our community. And, you know, your team's crushed it, which is great. And the council, certainly the direction's been phenomenal through the, you know, this investment in housing. With Blue 52, the Alta Verde 1 opening up, as well as Alta Verde 2, the Justice Center coming, that product mix, I think, is going to load up kind of that foot in the door inventory, which I think is going to put pressure on what Dick alluded to about keeping that talent here. And so I agree with Dick or whoever said it about, I think the stables piece, especially if it's kind of for those like mid-career employees, is a really important investment to making our talent here. And then I think if we do end up having to cut something, I think there's other things I'd rather forego, but again, also want to be thoughtful about density and making sure we don't overprogram that and probably do it in phases. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on childcare or anything else in the packet?
Oh, just where did we land with the Loge? Did we decide to fill it up or?
Oh, yeah, we're filling it up. Those units now are going to be available November 14th. So we're going to put, you know, Town of Breck employees in those and Summit County employees in those, at least for this coming season. The hope then would be next year to get it on public water and sewer, and then maybe we open it up to the broader public. I'm not sure if we keep that for Town of Breck or public, but for this year, we're going to get some employees in there soon.
Was that the same project that CDOT was putting in some of their employees?
They
too?
talked to the county. I don't know, the county hasn't asked for any of our units for CDOT.
they haven't come out and asked.
Yeah,
Ask.
they can ask.
Like the answer.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be ready to start putting Town of Breck employees in there.
Loge.
Loge.
We don't know the name.
Loge. Loge.
Chantilly.
Chantilly.
We
Oh, Reed
can't-
would go
we can't
beyond,
name it
he'd be all
Hydro,
behind
yes.
that.
The county.
The Chantilly Apartments, yeah.
Chantilly, oh, there we go.
Right,
Committee reports, there was one on social equity, which I'm sure we'll hear about that later, and financials. Questions for Dave?
That's a hard question.
And he has to look up this time. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. How are y'all doing? Good, thank you. Just a quick update on financials. August was, came back a little bit, excuse me. We're running about 11.5 million over our 22 budget for revenue, and driven mostly by sales tax. And that's continued to be strong. If I look at how we're running overall versus 2019, we're about year-to-date 39% higher than 2019. And broken up into some of the sectors, retail's 40, restaurant is 25% over 19, and short-term lodging is 74%. So that's really the three drivers there with regards to our year-to-date financials. I really don't have any further comments. We're working on a budget recon from our meeting last week into maybe a walkthrough next session of where we are, new housing pro forma that we've worked on, and maybe some changes, more changes, but that's okay. But, we're still working through those things, and I will see what I can find out on debt to other towns. We did I did a survey when I answered a survey when I first started here. We're quite a bit more. I don't want to throw out numbers.
It'd just be nice to know how leveraged we are.
Yeah, I'll gather that data for you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, questions for other questions?
No.
All right, thank you, sir. Right, we're a bit ahead, so let's take a quick 5 for the bathroom and then come back with policy 4 mass bonus.
Most of our I know, she's gone. We had,
Talking for a while.
yeah.
A couple
Kate
days
puts a
ago.
lot of energy into
Still
this.
will.
Don't let her think this is point.
Let's call and get some pizzas.
And then you lose members, goes up.
We're on. I've been up every month. I don't.
It was off July, a point and a half. Just a little, but it was all because of the. war.
Mass
And it was
farmers.
rain, because
This is
I
exciting
moved
stuff.
my decks.
And for me. All right, we're gonna get back to it and go to policy 4, mass bonus. Mr. Truckee.
Thanks, Eric. Steffi's here with me tonight, this
Steffi.
afternoon. And we'll be both going over this briefly with you. You know, we've talked about it several times already. At the last work session, you know, we had the policy originally addressing mainly condo, multifamily type developments. And then you guys suggested, let's go and just apply this across the board to everything. And so in doing that, we took a look at it because at that point, it was kind of a watershed moment for us and like, wow, do we even need either of these mass policies anymore, 4A or 4R, given this direction? And so we took a look at it and we just want to make sure there weren't any unintended consequences of, you know, doing that. And I think, you know, so that's what we've kind of outlined here, just a couple relatively minor issues that we found that Steffi will go over with you. The one thing I would say is in looking at policy 4A, the absolute policy on mass, you know, there's the whole table that was agreed upon years ago, as Eric remembers, for neighborhood preservation and limiting home size. And I don't think it's the council intention to touch this at this point in time. But one thing that's driven up the mass in some of these developments is the square footage for garage. You get an additional 900 square feet. So that's something we've thrown out as something that perhaps you'd want to remove. The other thing we're thinking is that what we could do is move that whole table over under policy 3 and just call that above ground density, just kind of like we have that. We already treat above ground density in the historic district under policy 3, which is our density policy. So everything in the future relates to density as opposed to mass. We don't really discuss mass on any future projects to actually make things much simpler for staff and the planning commission to do that. So anyway, that's just a brief overview, and I'll let Steffi just go through a few of the points here.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I was smiling at Jay because he knows how complicated some of the calculations can get. Yeah, as Mark mentioned, that basically all interior square footage would now be density. So that first point he touched on about the table being moved up, that was kind of one of our bigger consequences we looked at. We want to keep that table. A lot of work was put into it. The other issues we thought about was, as Mark mentioned, there's right now the exemption for the 900 square foot garage. We were thinking of maybe allowing, staff's thoughts were to allow some sort of allowance for neighborhoods, especially in Wellington, Wellington 2 and Lincoln Park for those bonus rooms. Because if we just get rid of that and get rid of the mass bonus, you won't be able to do that basically at all. So it kind of
When you say
coincides.
bonus rooms, you mean like a ADU?
Yeah, well, the
Different in the Wellington,
Wellington,
the ones above the garage.
yeah.
Well,
They're
yeah,
kind
that's
of-
what I meant. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. They're not
That-
technically ADUs
Yeah.
because they're not allowed to.
Between the two, I had that written down as well.
Yeah.
Of like,
Well, great minds think alike.
Bonus room and then ADU. So the master plans don't allow for full kitchen facilities up there. And an ADU, you need a kitchen to call it a full living space. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's called a carriage house in Wellington. So carriage houses
Market
can
rate.
have a full kitchen, and those are only, right, there's only associated with market units. But the deed restricted units can have a bonus room without a full kitchen.
Office, guest bedroom, that kind of thing.
And I think that's the right distinction. I mean, I think you said that well, Mark. I think it's deed restricted units can have bonus rooms.
Yep,
The-
and that's what the master plan already
but the
distinguishes.
bonus room can be rented out as deed restricted, just like an ADU, like someone that works in the counties. Okay.
So what staff was thinking, thanks for the questions on those, is to give some sort of extra allowance in those neighborhoods. We were thinking 500 square feet. That basically is a 2-car garage. Like the typical Wellington garage is 484 square feet. So we were thinking of allowing some sort of exemption in those neighborhoods. So that's kind of the first point. The other point is getting rid of all this massing, especially in the historic district. There might be some unintended consequences of parking and outdoor storage outside, which we're thinking we don't want. And so we're also thinking in the historic district to allow some sort of exemption from that, hard now density cap. Again, we're thinking probably like 500 square feet. So that was our idea there. Home size restriction, Mark already covered. And same with the 900 square feet exemption in the current code. The last point we really wanted to point out is that this might create a decent amount of legal non-conforming properties around town. We just wanted to point that out. So then we kind of mentioned just policies that are affected, which is obviously policy 4A and 4R, which are kind of getting moved around into policy 3, which is now just density, and then social community, which we talked about last time. So then we're happy to take any feedback now or answer any questions before we start drafting that code amendment bill for next time.
Questions?
With the 500 square feet for Wellington type neighborhoods, the previous 2 bonus rooms that came to us, we had to go through a development agreement anyway, because they didn't have enough mass. So we had to kind of have those waivers go through the development agreement process anyway. So would it make more sense not to have that 500 square foot allowance if the purpose is to incentivize bonus rooms, and anyway, they have to come to us?
I may be wrong, but my understanding was it was related to parking waiver for those.
There's a little bit of density.
Did we have to give
they
some?
were-
They
I
were
think
still
those were
under.
kind of yeah, those were already max.
It was a
But
duplex though.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
different.
we do, Carol, see not a lot, but I've seen since I've been here for a year and a half, quite a few bonus rooms that come through because they do fit in the density parameters that don't come to you guys.
Okay.
So we have had a couple, or they got built like the garage and the shell, and then they're finishing out that shell, which that's mass. So now that would be, anyway, so we do see those come through at a staff level as well.
Okay, that's helpful for context.
Dick?
Steffi, could you remind me what the consequence to the 24 was again?
Yeah, that's that social community. We have the absolute that requires all condos, hotels, inns and lodges to provide the ratio of 1 to
right.
35
right.
leisure amenities.
And we're gonna get rid of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, I don't have any questions. I don't think other than that.
Back to the bonus room one more time.
Mhm.
If ADUs don't count in the density plan, why do we have the bonus? Why do the bonus rooms count in the density plan?
Well, the Wellington neighborhood just addresses density in the master plan. But basically the density is being used up on the homes in the deed restricted units. So if they want to do a bonus room, they've always taken advantage of the mass because we've always interpreted it that you get the 20% mass bonus.
Don't forget, most ADUs are on unlimited density lots. Like you build an ADU on any single family lot, doesn't have any, there's no density cap like there is in the Wellington. Chris?
So in the Wellington master plan, as Mark said, it has like density numbers for both deed restricted and market rate lots, and says, and basically there's a little bit extra from what's allowed or what the typical unit types are, enough to cover the density for a bonus room or a carriage house. But if basically to make it work, you need that since mass is not addressed in the master plan, you go to the mass bonus. But if you didn't have the mass bonus or an exemption for the garage, then that garage space would take away from that little bit of additional density to cover the bonus room or the carriage house. So that's the gap. So like if, I think for like a deed restricted lot, the maximum density is like 2,100 square feet. So if you have your typical, 1,700-ish Wellington house, and then you have the typical 484 square foot garage, the 22 by 22 square foot garage, that would just take out all of your remaining density there. And then you couldn't build a bonus room, which was contemplated in the master plan. So I think to honor the intent, we thought we should carve out the garage.
If we were going to continue, if we wanted to continue to honor that and allow the bonus rooms for the deed restricted units, not necessarily the market, but we wanted to keep it for the deed restricted for accommodate families growing and things like that. Would we have to keep policy 4 then, or could we put the mass bonus into policy 3?
No, we kind of like started working on how we would shift it over, and we'd have an exception for density up to a certain limit to be exempt. And we're basically looking what the typical footprint of a Wellington garage is, and we can do it. But we've kind of looked at ways to just move everything over to policy 3.
Okay.
As long as that density is, as long as that density is only for a bonus room and not for anything else.
Well, the master plan does not distinguish. Like someone could potentially put an addition on the back of their house, like if they wanted to do a bedroom or something like that for like a growing family. I'm not sure that, the bonus room or whatever. The intent was to have some flexibility in the master plan. So I think our intent is to kind of keep the intent of the master plan intact. And that's one of the few casuals we saw if we eliminated the mass bonus. Everything else is kind of, if you're in a house that has an envelope or something else, you have unlimited density, but that's really the one neighborhood that would be affected. And it's also a locals neighborhood.
Well, it's also because those lots are substandard for what we do. That was part of the discussion with the developer at the time, is those lots are sub what we would normally allow in a development. That's why there was some give and take on that stuff. So, I mean, I'm okay with keeping it whatever the status quo is in those neighborhoods.
One more question on the non-conforming parcels. At what point would those like a non-conforming parcel trigger the need to conform to the mass bonus? Like if you have a property in the historic district, for example, that is non-conforming, at what point of renovation or scrape or remodel would that kick in?
Yeah, so, I guess if there was some proposal for, remodel addition or that, it would kick in at that point. Or also if something burned to the ground, it's, we've got that provision, which we'll actually be discussing here in a few minutes, that if something is, if a building is destroyed, demolished by 50% or more, it actually has to come to the planning commission to get approval to be rebuilt. And the reason.
How it was.
Yeah, how it was. Now, we allowed that, for example, on the 10 Mile Room, for them to rebuild as it was, even though that's, I'm sure it was a non-conforming building. But the whole idea of codes is to try to bring things more into conformity overall. And so, and that's why we pointed it out in this memo. This will create some more of that. But so that's the idea. If you had some building that was way out of character, like something on Main Street that was huge and, that we wanted to bring more into character, you could deny that potential to rebuild entirely and require that they come into conformance.
Great, thanks, Mark.
I think we'd have a problem with that, though.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of non-conforming use in this town. I mean, this isn't going to add anything in the vast pool of non-conforming uses that, there's a lot of buildings in this town. If they burn down, we're gonna have a problem if we try to make them smaller because of, a value. So
Yeah,
this has been a
taking-
topic of conversation for ever about this, that 50% thing and having to go in front of the planning commission because say Long Branch burned down, right? I mean, Long Branch doesn't really fit in the historic district, but it's all single condo owners. So are you going to give every one of those condominium owners a third of what they currently have? I mean, I can't imagine we would do that to begin with. Maybe we would try to bring them into more conformance as far as architecture, but you wouldn't. I mean, I think you would be wrong to take value away from them by decreasing the size of their units.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a takings, I would think. We wouldn't get away with it. So. But, the non-conforming, life safety issues, architectural issues. I mean,
Absolutely.
That they would, we would probably choose to make them conform with that stuff. So.
Other comments on,
there's certain things like the mass allowance for on-site renewable energy mechanical systems. Would we carry that over?
Yeah, that was, we alluded to it in the memo. That was the idea, is we'd probably just carry that stuff over. Yep. And we just put it in the density section under the exceptions under that table.
I don't know how much I agree with the historic district part. I mean, we have seen homes in the historic district get wildly out of size. So I don't know if I agree with giving another 500 square feet. I'd have to see some real examples. I mean, we've seen a lot of small historic homes get dwarfed by an addition with the amount of density that's on some of those properties. So I think if it would cause a addition to be smaller, I know we've tried to do that with some of our connector codes, but if it would help in that, I wouldn't agree to just give everybody that additional 500 feet. So.
Yeah.
Tend to agree with that.
Yeah, our concern was, twofold on that one. But you're right. I mean, we did change the code, the standards about 3 years ago to ratchet down on some of that. So they're not as big, the additions. So hopefully that will help. But it was parking. If we don't, it's an incentive to enclose the parking so we don't see cars parked outside. And then the sheds are something that we've got a fair amount of historic sheds in the district. And that would technically need to count as density unless we make some type of exception for it.
Yeah, I'm okay with an exemption for a historic shed, but I don't think that lends to the other problems we have in the historic district.
I agree with Eric. I'm not in favor of the 500. We're taking a chance. I think people, when they're investing that much in an addition, they're redoing those homes, they're gonna put a garage in there.
And if it doesn't, we have policy 9, make sure that the parking is screened in anyway. So there are protections from having it visible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's negative points, I believe.
Yeah, and as you know, there's a lot of instances where you can't do it anyway. You can't always access a historic property from the rear where you would put a garage. A lot of it's from the front. I mean, I can think of all kinds of projects where, we ended up, it's just, that's where you park your car in the historic district is out front. And a lot of cars in the historic district.
Okay, so in that one, we'll just provide an exemption for historic sheds. That
Yeah.
And everybody feels there's enough flexibility in there to migrate or navigate that thoughtfully without adding like a 500-foot bonus piece in there. Or we could have garages if somebody wanted to have a garage and they're backed up to an alley and they could screen it in.
You want to have the staff do some examples so you can see that?
Yeah. It'll be helpful for me just to get me educated. I mean, I think I'm on board with the direction you're going. I just want to understand a little more. Yeah, well, I'm at the mic. Agree on the policy, and I live in the Weisshorn for full disclosure. Yeah, I don't think there needs to be a 900 square foot bonus for homes that have 8,000 feet. Like, I think we're good there. And I also like having the bonus rooms be a viable option there in the Wellington. I think that makes a ton of sense. It's valuable for our community. That's all I got.
Yeah, same. You know, the bonus rooms, I would want to make sure it's just for the deed restricted properties. And
Agree.
everything else, I think I'm in agreement with.
I agree with Dick.
Okay, good. All right. Does that give you some stuff to work with?
Yeah, we'll bring examples back, but we'll plan on having it for a first reading.
Great.
Too.
Next meeting.
Long. Yeah, I know.
Awesome.
You guys were hoping to see that, so.
I'm anxious.
Perfect.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Entrada Development Agreement. You staying put?
Input. Yeah.
What's that? Oh, in a tooth. Can't get it out. Floss here.
It's not that really.
All right, Mark.
Okay, so just Sam Dudek and Brian Connolly are here on behalf of the applicants on this one. So I'm sure they'll be able to provide any additional input that might be helpful on this. We've had 2 previous work sessions on this, and what I outlined in the early part of the memo is pretty much all the things that have been agreed to. We're actively working on writing this development and annexation agreement. And so as we got through, doing that, we identified just a handful of issues yet that were like, the council really hasn't weighed in on these, and we really should do that before we actually go to a first reading. So to have everything pretty cleaned up. So that's what I'm really focusing on. I bulleted out all the items that we feel we had agreement on in the previously. If the council has any issues or sees anything that doesn't look right there, please let me know, because we'll definitely want to address that also. But the outstanding issues are, the first one is related to the rent restriction. At the July 26th meeting, we had a fairly long discussion about that. And what the conclusion was that one is BGV was going to come back with a number to see if it satisfied the council's concerns, and that number would include utilities. So if you'll remember, the original number was like $2.50 a square foot. BGV came back with, at least in a draft in the development agreement, $2.90 a square foot. And so but that includes utilities. So we need to get some input from the council on that. Essentially what that does is then that averages out. Most of these units are the smaller 411 square feet. So out of the 66 units, 56 of them are the smallest size. And at the $2.90 a square foot, you're looking at a rent of $1,191, so about $1,200, and that's a 65% AMI.
One again?
411 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what pretty much
With utilities.
utilities.
Did you say 65 AMI?
That's 65 AMI. The numbers you saw previously were right at 60,
Yeah.
right on 60.
And what's included in the utility?
I'll have these guys would.
Everything that you guys have included in yours.
Okay.
So there'd be no.
I assume they're
additional-
talking about a water, gas, electric. You're not talking about internet or
Internet.
cable, right?
Trash.
Right.
We factored in trash, XL,
Plowing.
Comcast, water, plowing.
Comcast, yeah.
Okay. Just not internet.
Comcast.
It's probably everything but internet. Okay.
What is Comcast? Oh, that's TV or something?
Hello.
Oh. If you can't get animal, you might as well go with the Compass.
Would there be any additional maintenance or management fees over that?
I can't answer
Oh, he
that.
shook his head no.
No? Okay, thanks. Yeah, so we're really looking at input on that. The other thing that kind of got left out there last time is, and they have identified for us is that there may need to be an adjustment between now and when CO happens. And so Sam can probably provide you a little bit more on what their proposal might be on that. But in other words, proposing between 280 and 290 a square foot right now, because they gave me something just yesterday that said between 280 and 290. However, that there could be some adjustment to the time that CO actually happens, which may be, like in 2024. And so I guess we need input from you on both if you're comfortable with the rental rate that they're coming up with, and then how you would want to treat any adjustment or not allow for by 2024. You have anything to add on that in terms of what you would be proposing?
Yeah.
Why don't
please,
you?
Sam.
Yeah.
Sam Dudek, thanks for having us. No, nothing else to add. I think we all agreed for just the CPI and utility inflation from the time we agreed here to the time we CO. So whatever that CPI is during this time period, let's say if it's next or 2 falls from now in 24, we'll just adjust the rents upwards to that and start from there as our base rent with the 3% annual escalator after that.
Lori, what's AMI tied to? Is it tied to CPI?
Not at all. And there's probably not a decent relationship between CPI. Cost of products. AMI tended to sort of help us figure out what people can afford based on their income. So yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a little different interpretation. I just looked yesterday again at the video, and you guys never really weighed in on what that adjustment would be by 2024. Sam did mention that there would be an adjustment, but you guys really never.
Well, we said no to CPI pretty clearly and unanimously at the last meeting.
I thought that was.
But for the
It was a
annual
3%
change,
annual
yes,
increase.
yes.
3% annual increase.
Yeah, that we've agreed to.
So to me, we just got to figure out what's the starting rent going to be. And then and then it can increase 3% annually.
Right.
Yeah, it's just getting really complicated if we're agreeing to a number, but that number may change by the time we CO.
Yeah, and so we can't do that. I mean, we're agreeing to give a lot, 70 points, waiving lots of policies, lots of dollars in density that we're fronting up front. I mean, we're doing a lot on this project, but I don't think we can do that with a moving target as to what we're going to deliver to our workforce.
I mean, if you had a little bit, if you had a little bit of wiggle room in there, because I think it still keeps around that 1,200 a month, which is what we're generally charging for the town units, as you say, that first year rent upon CO would be an amount up to, not to exceed like $3 a square foot or something, maybe.
My only concern with that, Rick, is we don't have a solid commitment on unit size. We have loose estimates. But at this point, there's no solid commitment, at least not that I'm seeing or reading. I see a range. But I mean, to me, there's no mechanism to keep that from changing. So if the unit sizes change, then the whole formula changes. And, this isn't solid enough for me.
Wait, is there some unit size?
So, yeah, I feel like there's some sort of disconnect here. We originally proposed the $2.50 per square foot. And you guys in July or August, whenever the last work session was, we were here asked to include the utilities on top of that. And when we looked at the utilities cost, we're kind of in the, 100, what I averaged out, $150, $160 a month per unit. On that, with our 3 different unit sizes, it brought us to a range of $2.80 to $2.88 per square foot per unit. That leaves us in, the 85% of our units will be at the 65% AMI, which you guys wanted to see. We have 3 unit sizes. One's 411 square feet, 471 and 521 is what we're currently penciled at right now. Obviously, it still needs to go through the planning commission process and all that, but that's what we have currently.
AC under 521, is that 2-bedroom?
Studios.
They're all studio. Okay, it's just a larger studio. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, I thought what we discussed in late July was to settle on a base rent applicable or apples to apples to your guys' AMI calculation, and then to be able to adjust it for inflation by the time we CO. So we can all set in a base rate at the time of CO and then have the 3% cap thereafter.
Yeah.
I
don't want to be argumentative, but that's not what I remember agreeing to. I thought we were hard on the 250 at that meeting, but I think there was some miscommunication around the original 250. I don't recall utilities ever being talked about in the initial meetings. And, it was related to AMI, and AMI always includes utilities. So I think we were making some assumptions that utilities were included from the beginning. When it became clarified, I don't think that was an addition in our minds. I know it was for you guys, but it wasn't for us.
No, I thought it was pretty clear at your direction specifically to come back with utilities included.
In July. Yeah.
That's what we did.
Okay. Again, I heard it differently, but if that's how you feel, it's okay. I'm not going to argue.
I think what I heard was you guys said, let's add on utility, bring back to us, and we'll take a look at it and see if it, we think it's appropriate or not. So what we're showing, at least in the bulk of these units, 56, is the AMI's changed from 60 to 65% as a result of the utilities. So it's a question for the council whether they're comfortable with that or not.
But what happens if a CPI is index used in inflation to 24 months from now? And AMI is not affected, then does it go from 65% AMI to 80% AMI?
Well, it could. So I think we should treat those as separate issues and first talk about whether you agree with the rates as they're being proposed right now. Then we could talk about if we want to allow some type of inflationary number, however we base that.
That's called AMI. I don't understand the resistance to AMI. That is how we do all of our other housing projects. And if we want to have this adjustable rate for the next 2 years, let's just use AMI.
All along, we've said that we don't want to use AMI because there's no certainty with the adjustment year over year. So that's why we wanted to set a base rent with a set cap thereafter.
Sure. And
because last year it went up 9%, then it was flat. It's been negative in some years. So we just wanted to have some consistency from our end so we can pro forma this and make a project work.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to be viewed as any sort of retrade on BGV's part. All along, we've stated that the 250 was for the base rent to cover, what the debt service for the building. The utilities were not included in that up front. And so we added those ancillary expenses to run the building on top of it at your guys' direction from the last meeting.
With the CPI, that is something that is super volatile right now. So that's not something I'd be comfortable agreeing to.
We were talking about a 3%.
Yeah.
So the 3% we've agreed on.
Right,
What
we're not
they're
talking about
is
adding CPI.
CPI would be allowing the 290 a square foot to increase based on a CPI ratio from
Before
2
they
years
even
from
open
now.
the doors. That's the part that's so
That's-
confusing to me, because when we talk about base rent, you assume that's first year rent. That's what we're starting out at. Now we're talking, well, yeah, but first year rent might be X because it's a year and a half from now. I mean, when all of our other projects, we go into it. I mean, you're already building a pro forma, I mean, to me, that's first year rent. That's base, first year rent. And then so I'm just so surprised this one's coming up again after what we agreed on. But
So is the difference, the utility, is it the 40 cents? Is that the difference? So really what you're looking at then is 250 for rent. And then whatever the increase in utility is.
Yeah.
And if it goes up 3% for the next 2 years, that takes it up to 293. So
Why don't we
increase on the
agree
40
to the
cents.
base rent, the 280 to 290 range, and then a 3%, we'll just start today with a 3% escalator for the next basically 2 years until we CO.
But Sam, I think that's what Rick was saying is that
Right.
if we look at 290, that should be year one of the rentals, whenever that COs, whether that's next year or the year after that or the year after that.
Well, I would think that 290 would be today's rate.
That's not what we agreed to. I've got the stuff from both previous meetings and that wasn't what we agreed to. We agreed to the number being the base rent for the first year of rentals.
Yeah, and
That's after CO.
last meeting, we discussed the CPI during the time from, that meeting through the construction period.
You
It's
brought it
just the
up,
co-
but I didn't agree to that.
Did you rewatch the meeting?
I did.
And I can't remember what our comments were.
You didn't comment on that change from now until 2 years from now. The focus is all just on the rent rate, and then it was on that 3% afterwards, once we get it established per year.
So, yeah, I can't remember, but what you're saying, Mark, did we assume that the 250 now 290, which makes sense for the 40% for the utilities? Do we assume that would be the rate for the first year? Or did we leave the door open for increase, whether, what the market, what the CPI does in 2 years?
That wasn't decided.
Was it brought up? Was it that?
Sam brought it up at the last meeting, although I didn't even really catch CPI in the discussion. It was more related to AMI. But he did bring up the idea of there being some additional adjustment between now and 2024, say if it's CO'd in 2024. But you guys really didn't weigh in on that point because I think you were more focused on these other two issues.
I thought it was something that was discussed at the last meeting because, a week or two prior to that in July, the CPI for the year had come out at, 8+% in the US. So I thought that discussion did happen. I'm sorry if I'm misremembering it. I rewatched the meetings as well, but if you guys are uncomfortable with that and don't feel like that was discussed, why don't we just lock in the 290 today? And that will be the base rent at the time of CO in 2 years.
Do we have data on the,
What we want.
I think the 290 is too rich. When I look at just doing some quick math and if there's backup data on actuals on, if there's a project that can show some actuals on utilities, that'd be valuable. Because when I'm looking at just quick math, 500 square foot studio, 40 cents a month, that's $200 for utilities. I've got some new projects that I've been involved with that are 2,000 square foot units that are coming in less than $200. So 4 times the size and less the money. And it, maybe doesn't factor in plowing, but the 40 cents seems, yeah, I'd love just some data there to get a little smarter. And for me, it'd be helpful in these packets to break out, the 3 unit sizes and then show me 250, show me 290, show me whatever, if there's a CPI calculation in there that you're trying to I want to understand what the number is because 500 square foot at 290, well, is that $1,500 a month? So it's hard to do it by square foot for me to make sure it makes sense. And again, $200 a month for a studio seems rich.
It's what I took was from our Moose Landing project out on Airport Road, which was 48 units.
Cool.
So I did take direct data from that, which includes trash, XL, Comcast, water, insurance, security, snow removal, and recycling. So everything it cost us to run that facility is what I factored in this, which is on average $157 a month per unit.
And again, I think that'd be valuable to see the data to walk through that. And that's great. I love that you use actuals. It's super that you got something that's new and fresh and current there. So that I appreciate that very much. When you say Comcast, what is that? Internet, TV,
Yeah,
both?
internet and TV in there.
Okay,
Which we
cool.
would have Allo fiber in there in the building for.
Cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'd like to see the data on some of that just to make sure it's translating right.
But at this point, you'd agree to going at 290 when the doors open? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll go with it. It's not what I believe we agreed to, but I'll go with it.
So 290, and then is there some sort of accelerator in there on the CPI as well, or is
Then it's
290?
3% after that, which we had agreed to quite a while ago.
At CO, when we beginning renting these, it'll be at 290 a foot.
And a year later, it'll be a 3% escalator.
There's not a 3% bump on the 290 starting today.
No.
Okay.
Okay, yes, I am good there. Can I ask about the TDRs and PIFs?
Yes, everybody else, okay, let's get through this one. Everybody okay with
Yeah.
290 when the door opens?
Yes.
Got that, Mark? It's on video. Okay, Jay.
Talking about today's price versus when things are done, we talked that the PIFs and the TDRs will be reimbursed by the applicant upon using it for a project such as North Gondola. Do those PIFs and TDRs, are they reimbursed at today's price or when they're redeemed?
No, it's at the then current price whenever that happens. And the other thing, just the note I got from looking back at the meeting too, is that Eric had made a point about that's fine to repay those at that point in time. However, if there's sale of the units, it has to occur at an earlier time. So we're gonna have to.
At the sale.
Yeah, at the sale. So we're gonna have to
Where we
build
get-
that into
yeah.
this too. That's something we didn't
get
really discuss.
Paid
but-
for the TDRs at
Yeah.
the sale of the unit, at the time of sale.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Then under the land use district that it says that the condition of its water system should be carefully examined and expansion of existing lines may be necessary. With the town bearing the cost of bringing the water system to the site, is there any concern on what upgrades or infrastructure needs to be done that might be?
I don't think, are we bearing the cost of bringing it to the site? I think we're just.
I think that it's under deal points. First one is the town will provide water service.
Provide.
Just the water.
Yeah, they have to pay.
Water service to,
Because
it's in the street.
Yeah.
We never take it to your house. You pay for that.
Thanks.
they kind of got a little excited over there for a minute.
Let's talk about the condominiumization and selling off the individual units. Any heartburn over this?
So my question, so all the rent agreements that carries on to the new owner, they have to abide by
Yep.
the rate set?
Yep, the rent rate will be locked for the new owner. Live work deed restriction, we're deed restricting all the units up front. So all those rent caps will be in place up front. And then, whoever buys it, an employer, person, whoever may be, will bear the burden of kind of that subsidy. So whether, the unit sells for $300,000 or $1 million, the rent's still going to be locked in at that $290 a foot for the employee that's renting the unit.
Do you think having that rent cap will influence the value of those units to some outside buyer?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, we're certainly seeing it with the existing, deed restricted properties we're selling. Yeah, absolutely.
So it wouldn't be that arduous to add a resale cap. So that really wouldn't be that big a deal then, if we did that, because I'd like to do that to be consistent with our other projects.
But if that was the case, would that even be necessary if the rent cap, would that do the same thing as
Well, I think for consistency with our other projects, it's necessary.
Well, the other thing I just wanted to point out is there's no requirement to rent these units. So, I mean, there's a restriction on rental, but as far as I can tell, there's no requirement that's been proposed. So someone could buy a unit, and as long as they met the workforce restriction, they could stay in it. Now, you guys tell me if there's something I'm not aware of here, but so putting a resale
it could be
cap in
owner
place would address that issue if it's not being rented.
But
You know, in terms
there
of-
will be that 30-hour live work deed restriction for a
Right.
person working in some account on that unit.
Have to meet that.
But it
correct.
could be owner occupied.
Yes.
Which is fine with me. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that'd be great. To have people be able to buy their own place.
So, and I think what, Todd said and what we feel like, with these rental restrictions and caps already in place, it will already somewhat cap the sale price of these units to begin with. I don't feel like we need to further restrict the sale of these units to begin with.
Todd?
Would create, especially right out of the gate, it would create, not knowledge, that's the wrong word. The cap would create like certainty on the price right out of the gate, affordability certainty. It would also be a risk for the developer, right? Like if you capped it, like in my mind, it's complex, and the sale piece, what I'm trying to work through here, right, is like, so in a cranking market, those values are going to escalate. If there's not a cap, maybe beyond the needs of, or beyond the means of a buyer. In a slower market, well, the market's just going to take care of itself. So to some degree, the market's just going to work out. And, we're not seeing a tremendous amount of businesses that are picking up deed restricted properties here, right? Companies are not investing in this. I like the rent cap. I think that creates certainty and value, right, for our community. And so certainly appreciate you guys doing that. A good part of me thinks the market will just take care of it. The number will be with it, what they can sell them at is what they can sell them at. It's a question of, like what we do on our projects, right, for the town is we're subsidizing some of those units.
So the only way you get price creep is if someone buys it and, and he's comfortable with the live work and he doesn't rent it. He's, he buys it to live in it. Then there's no disincentive to not to jack up the price.
Where you get
No disincentive for a price creep.
the price creep is really, yeah, exactly. Where the price creep is going to occur is when there's a constraint on supply, which is kind of what we're in right now. So it's
driven by the market.
Yeah.
But if the goal was to have 65% AMI, and I don't know what a studio sells for at 65% AMI, but it's going to be less than the market, right? And
So you're not that concerned, you're not that concerned about or enamored with a price cap or a appreciation cap?
I need to think more on it, right? Because you got to get the project off the ground. I can appreciate that from the developer side. Like they got to get enough money to get the project off the ground. One of the risks and challenges here is that, you look into Wellington, like if the number starts too high, like what I like about the caps is it guarantees affordability into the future. And there could be a point where these aren't affordable, right?
And they
they're-
won't sell.
Yeah, so the market would push it down. So, yeah, and I apologize, I don't have clear, here's the answer, right? Like, yeah, I still need to think on it.
It might be helpful just for Lori to weigh in on this a little bit, just in terms of previous annexations, because I think we have put sales caps in for most annexations we've done previously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of any annexation.
Whoops, sorry. Yeah, I can't think of any annexations that we have done where we didn't have an initial price target. I mean, there's nothing quite like this in terms of it being rental and for sale. Most of our annexations have been for sale product, but this could be 100% for sale. There's no obligation that these be rentals. So when I compare it to other for sale, we've always had some initial AMI target because the deed restriction light does not really ensure they're going to stay affordable over time, even though the market should, but the market's broken up here. We know that without some sort of price target and appreciation cap, units don't stay affordable.
But aren't they building this also to satisfy their own housing needs? So they're not gonna be, I can't imagine them.
Maybe, maybe not.
Well, they're gonna have housing needs. And I can't imagine them selling to their employees.
I think overall, selling them off is a great opportunity for small businesses that can't afford to build them. It is a great opportunity. I think to Lori's point, where I'm more concerned about the initial price, where it needs to be affordable for others to purchase it, and is the free market going to regulate it? Because otherwise, at that time, BGVs might do it for their 24A requirement. And I don't want price passed on to the potential small business that's purchasing a unit.
That part doesn't bother me. Because if it was just businesses buying these, it wouldn't bother me at all. Because a business owner would buy it knowing what the price is, knowing what they had to rent it at. They would make the subsidy for their employees. So mentally, that's okay. The part I didn't consider is that these could just be free market for somebody that lived here. And it does solve zero problem for us then. If you could theoretically sell every one of these right out of the gate, then it doesn't solve the problem that we were working at, that we're giving some of these things for, which I did not even know that that was a potential that a private, like somebody could just buy it and live there and work 30 hours a week. So that's different than, this is the first we haven't not talked about selling, but I have not heard this part of it.
And then there's no income cap on that, right? Like on the owner of that.
All
yeah.
on buying it.
And that's
Anybody
what
can buy it.
and that's what I'm like, free market should control the price there, but yeah, there's some other factors there that I'm with you on that. It's that's why it's complicated on they go sell them all. And
But
there's no income cap and they don't have to rent it.
Yeah. And they're selling them and maintaining their ability to use the credits against 24A in the future.
They're not if they sell them. The minute they sell them, they get no credit for it. The credit
Is
only
that
comes,
right?
yeah, the
Is
credit
that
only comes if they keep control of it.
Is that the way you
Or
understand it? Sam?
credit and then
They
sell.
can't do that either. They
I
have to,
thought they were banking the credit.
they're
Had-
only banking the credit for the ones that they use at the time. They can't bank, they don't get 70 units or whatever this is that goes in a bank. They can only bank what they have available at the time that they need them. If they don't own them, they don't count. And if they're not rented, they don't count.
That
That's
makes,
what we talked about.
okay,
early
but that's
on.
not in here.
Well, we haven't seen the actual agreement, but we talked about that from the get-go. Anything they sell gets taken out of the pool. We're not banking all of these units against any
Yeah.
potential development need, which is why they're not paying the TDR or the water PIF until they take it into 24, and why they have to pay it if they're sold ahead of time. So that's not a bank for the whole thing.
Do you agree with that, Sam? Because that's not the way I read it.
Because if that's the way it is, this deal falls apart. You don't get 70 units and then to go sell them. That doesn't.
I think we were under the impression that the units came with the transferability of the credit. So we would get all of the credits to be able to bank for the future.
Not if you sell them. That was never part of this. I mean, I don't know why we would.
We never talked about it. This is the first time we really talked about sale.
Well, no, because we have talked about sale to other businesses, and say Mountain Wave buys a unit. If Mountain Wave buys a unit, DGV doesn't get the credit for that employee housing unit.
I agree with you, but I don't think they do.
Well, code says they have to build, right, new housing, new workforce housing to mitigate those employees that are generated. So how do we interpret the code, right? I mean, those are that's they're just building it and they don't have to own it. They can sell it to somebody else. or-
This document is
understand what I'm
asking us
saying?
to promise credits.
Deed restricting every unit up front to begin with, then we were gonna be able to bank all those credits.
No,
With that
no, because
upfront
if you
deed
sell them,
restriction.
that doesn't count because they're not truly deed restricted. They're only deed restricted at rent. If you sell them to somebody, some private citizen, that's not deed restricted anymore. Because you're not putting a cap on resale on the unit. That's not a deed restricted unit. It's only deed restricted to somebody that lives there that's paying rent.
A light deed versus a heavy deed.
And it's not even a light deed at that point. It's a zero deed. It's a 30, I mean, it is a super light deed. It's 30 hours a week and no short-term rental, but that's it. So that is not my understanding of how
Okay.
we did it, if you see.
Yeah, no, that makes sense and we'll go with that.
Okay.
Well, we sure need to get tight language.
Yeah, we need to tighten that stuff up, Mark. So for the,
Because I don't see any language in here that states what you just did.
Yeah, I'm assuming what Sam and their company is thinking is that if they sold the unit, that it would still be available for whoever they sold it to use to meet some type of workforce housing requirement.
they could, if somebody else was building a project, say somebody bought the Peak 8 project and
Mhm.
bought half of what they were doing, they could use those as long as they kept them all in that rental pool.
Mhm, mhm.
I think that is legit, but what they can't do is bank
Bank everything. in-
100X and then they get sold to somebody that is not utilizing them for that same purpose. Because the minute they get sold, if somebody lives there that's not paying rent, no longer are in the affordable pool. They're just living with a deed restricted light is all they're doing. It's actually deed restricted super light. That's all that is. So there's a hole that we need to plug here somehow.
Yeah, I know I personally would like some more info around kind of like what prices would be if there was a deed restriction on the sale price, run it through, whether it's 60, 70, 80% AMI, just to see, hey, on studios, that's what you're looking at, or if you want to do it by square foot, like what the numbers would look like there. Because yeah, the affordability piece that you were mentioning on, Carol, is really, yeah, it's like, is the market going to take care of it? And my concern is exactly the gap you've mentioned. And I think we need more details.
Yeah,
quite
we're not going to solve this up here. You guys need to go back and talk about that piece. And then, so one way out of that is put a cap on resale. That's one way to do that, but
Well, initial price and resale.
correct.
Yeah.
Which means they would have to be sold at they could only be sold at whatever, 85% AMI or something would set the initial price.
Yeah.
And then you would have a similar resale limitation like we do on others, so that in perpetuity, that home is going to be similar in how it's occupied to our other deed restricted.
Yeah,
So there's something that needs to be solved there, and we
I
don't.
don't want to reinvent the deed restrictions. I think we use deed restrictions we're currently using.
Then you could have, then if they sold it, whoever they sold, the credits can only get used once.
Yes.
You can't double dip, right? Either they're gonna use them or they sell them to somebody else who's gonna use them.
Right.
Or not.
24.
If we sell them at market, we won't have the credits on those units, correct?
Correct.
Units we sell at market.
Definitely.
We would lose the credits. Correct.
Right.
I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
there. Yep.
And you have to pay back the,
Now, in terms of a resale cap, And just looking at the Summit County AMI chart, 80% AMI for a studio is $223,000. You guys know what you're building, your cost per unit at the Justice Center is around 290,000 per unit. So something, the math just doesn't add with the resale cap tied to the AMI here. It's something that we can't further restrict as a developer. We need to get the project up and off the ground.
No, I get that, but you need to figure out a way that those units are for rent and that's it. They're not for somebody to buy and live in. I don't know how we do that, but that's the hole in this plan, is that there is a way to buy your product and they're now no longer affordable.
But there's a few different mechanisms to run, a younger professional through the system, whether it's a restaurant owner buying and subsidizing some of the costs there to have a line cook in there in a unit for the winter.
Oh, that I get.
Or somebody else that's able to buy a unit and get their foot in the door and start their path forward through the system, at a starting point in a studio like this.
I get that, but that is not solving your problem for employee mitigation that you need to resolve.
Which is what?
Which is whatever you guys are building next, you're going to have an employee number you need to satisfy. A young professional from Denver buying one of your units does not satisfy that.
That's why there's the live work 30 hours a week in Summit County restriction.
No, I get that though, but that could be anybody that moved to the community. These are
in terms of the sale.
originally, when you guys brought this to us, this was deed restricted housing for your development. That's what it was. Then the next phase was, we might sell some of these, but we'd sell them to business owners to rent. Now we find that there's an opportunity potentially to sell to somebody that's just going to live there and work in the community. That's that is really changing the discussion here of what we're doing. And I am not.
And if that was the case, I don't think any of us would waive the PIFs, the density. So it is those market rate for sale that
are
have
sort
the
of screwing
problem.
this thing
Yeah.
up. So
Well, I can certainly appreciate that some market rate sales would be needed to make the project go, right? So like, it's a math equation.
the problem is we never talked about that. This was never about market rate in this development. This was strictly about a rental cap and an AMI that we were negotiating on. That's what this was all about. Brian.
I want to make sure that I understand
Yeah.
what we're hearing, since Kirsten and I are going to be the ones that have to draft this up. So what I'm hearing is, if there were a sale price cap, then those units could continue to be banked. Because the way that we have this structured right now is that the banking, the credits for the employee housing is going to essentially run with the land unless they're somehow sold off from the land, right? So BGV owns the property, they could sell off those credits if they wanted, and somebody else could use those credits for purposes of satisfying employee housing mitigation, or BGV could keep those.
No, that is not. These don't run with the land, they run with the units.
But
The only units that you can take credit for are units that you own at the time that you need the credits. You cannot sell. So I'm a guy that moves to town. I'm going to work here 30 hours a week for the town of Breck. I'm going to buy a unit from you. You don't take credit for my unit anymore. That is out of your control now. The only ones you get credit for are the ones that you own.
So, okay, can I ask a question? What if BGV sells these units to another party that then rents them out? Does that party then get the credits?
Would potentially get the credits then.
So the credits, in council's view, the credits only run with units that are rented, not units that are sold.
Unless there's a cap.
Okay, we're saying the same thing
You guys
then.
agree with this? I'm sorry.
Yeah. But it's not only a cap on resale, it's a starting price as well.
Right. So I assume if there's gonna be a starting price, it's somehow gotta be tied to AMI or something like that, right? So, okay, so I think we're actually saying the same thing. So we get the credits, if the units are sold with a cap, with future sale price, or we get the credits if they are either held by BGV or transferred to another party that continues to rent them subject to the restriction on
Well, those guys
rent.
get the credits, you don't.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And some credits would vanish because if a unit got sold to somebody that was not part of a larger entity and they don't need the credit for anything, that credit vanishes.
And that's even if that unit is not, is capped on sale price or.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter because you have a need you have to satisfy that's not a larger community need. So somebody that's just working in the community that's not tied to another development that needs to satisfy 24R, there's no credit available once that leaves your domain.
I'm looking at Kirsten because I don't think that in a annexation and development agreement, we can tie the credits to one particular party, right? Being BGV, they have to somehow be tied to
It's easy because
the
at the end,
units.
when you come to us with a development agreement and you say you need 100 units and we're now going to supply 20 because that's what we have left. That's where you get the credit for those units. I mean, it's fairly simple. Whatever happens between now and then is almost irrelevant. Whatever you have to offer at that time. The only reason we allowed you to hang on to the credit is because you were going to build it today and not in the traditional sense when stuff got built either during development or after, concurrent with development.
Jump in,
Trying to
yeah.
understand what you're saying. Can you go ahead?
So I don't think that this agreement is not personal to BGV. It is an agreement that runs with the land.
Right.
And so I don't think that we can say that BGV is the only party that would be able to have these employee housing credits as a result of this project. So
But that's not what I'm understanding.
No, but that is correct. But if there is no attached development to the owner of one of those units, then there is no credit there.
why couldn't that owner then sell off the credit that comes with their unit?
That credit doesn't actually exist except for what you are supplying for your development at the time of your application.
But if BGV's created deed restricted employee housing, right, that then is sold off to somebody who.
It's not how it works in the development code.
Second, I thought we did, because I think we are all confused. Just, I'm trying to understand as well. If a local employer wanted to purchase something to satisfy the mitigation, that's okay.
No, because
No.
yeah, if they had a project, if that local employer had a project, that works.
Yeah,
If that
that's,
local employer has a business that has no project that's coming.
I agree with you on that. But so
So you're saying that only the party that holds the units has the right to use the credit?
I think we need to look harder at 24. We're trying to skim it here, but so you get the credit for building new units, right? These are new units. 24 allows you to sell those units. But I think it's good. but
There's
we
no
can
double
require
dipping.
that it's sold with, yeah, because you've already got the credit for building them. Now, the person that buys them, they're no longer a new unit, right? So
Correct.
they're not getting credit. The initial developer gets the credit for them because they're building new units. It doesn't require you to utilize all of them, but you do get the credit and you can sell them. The way I understand this policy, we need to look at it. Because it also, though, I think allows you to put a full-blown, those can have a full-blown deed restriction on them, the ones you're selling.
I think the next time we talk about this, we need to agree upon what the deed restriction says. So I think we need to
I
start.
think it's in the
working.
policy.
well, it seems like we can just go with our standard and we can work that out. But do you feel like we have enough to go on?
We may need to talk more
Okay.
about this. Yeah. Okay.
Good enough. The employee housing mitigation piece. I will tell you, I'm personally okay because this is just an employee housing I'm okay with not having that mitigation piece and.
Oh, the 24A in regards to this project.
Yeah, this is the 2688 square feet that they're entitled to.
Yeah.
On site, but you're not creating anything other than housing. So but that's just me.
I agree with that, but should we revisit the code there too to get rid of that?
And we have talked about this before, about if somebody builds just affordable housing, why would we make them build a couple more units to satisfy the affordable housing?
So they've actually proposed that they would use 500 square feet instead of the 26. Are you okay with that? Or would you just say nothing at all?
We take that 500 and let somebody have a garage in the historic district. How do you guys feel about this?
I mean, I like that they offered up 500. That's
Yeah.
nice. So thank you.
We, we looked at the code and it just doesn't really. We agree with the intent of 24A for development, just with building employee housing, to mitigate employee housing. It just didn't make
I
sense.
agree
So,
with you, Sam.
you know, we figured we would probably have one on-site property manager, which would be one unit kind of at that.
Yeah.
rate.
About TDRs and market rate, if there's market rate sales out of this. And
We get
TD
paid back for those right away at the current rate.
Whether it's market or deed.
That doesn't
restricted.
matter. It gets paid. Once it
Any
leaves
kind of
their
sale.
domain, they're gonna, once they sell, they'll pay that off.
Do we have good direction from the town whether they will even, is the council willing to allow any market rate sales?
Market rate meaning.
Meaning no,
We haven't talked about that yet.
I know.
With no
That was-
deed on it whatsoever.
We were told this entire project would be deed restricted.
Yeah, I know,
so I'd
but
say
some,
no.
but
I'll
they
jump
talked
in
about
here.
some with no cap control and others maybe have some. And to me, if you're gonna take credit for it, potential credit, it's gotta have the full blown.
Right.
Which includes some sort of, and do we have direction on what you would be comfortable with for if we are looking at a sale restriction, what AMI that would be?
65, just like the rental rate,
No.
right?
Well, then I mean, those units would only sell for $200,000. I mean, they're gonna cost 400.
Yeah, a
300.
price cap like that in any terms would be a deal killer for us. We couldn't move forward with the project and really any cap in general on the sales price. We'll need to go back and discuss, but it's gonna make it difficult for us to move forward.
You guys need to go back and come with more of a matrix on what you really need. Since we've sort of been talking about that stuff, if you need some market rate units, you need to come back and say, and let us think about it, because right now it's really such a, it's really. this
Yeah, I mean,
thing
if they're gonna
started as
take credit for
purely-
these things, right?
This thing started
as-
as a rental project and that was it. And it's really starting to evolve. So I think we need to really understand what you really want. Or what you
I
need.
thought
what you
we've been
need.
upfront all along in each meeting that we did intend to sell some of these. And I think in the very first meeting,
Absolutely, but I will tell you that in discussions I've had with you guys, that for sale was always couched as sale to a local business, and then they would absorb some of the rent. And I don't disagree with that at all. I actually thought that was a great philosophy on how this thing would be run. There is nothing to prevent these things being sold and just being sold to the highest bidder at some point that lives in town. So somebody that's 300% AMI could easily live in one of these things and pay whatever. I mean, stuff that we're seeing all over the community now in places that we don't have really strong deed restrictions. That may ebb and flow for a while, but we'll get to a hot market again and these things will be super valuable because they're a great location and they're going to be really nice. And we need to get to the right point on these. So, and I hate to do these on the floor. I think this is, you guys need to talk about it with the staff and understanding what our sort of philosophical understanding of the project is. Do you get a good candle on this, Mark, from us?
Easy.
Yeah.
At least from our,
Easy. Yeah, we
at
got
least what
Yes.
our beliefs on what the project's supposed to be for water density,
Yes.
et cetera.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be clear on 24 and what the deed restriction needs to be.
Yeah, if there's pieces in the deed restriction 24 that work to their advantage, that's fine. That's what the code is. So that's, you know, as long as it's a level playing field for everything we're doing.
We had the development and engineering standards here as another issue. They're looking for a few waivers. From development, it's just from the parking requirement, and they'd like to just have one parking space instead of two for the associated with their office. We require a minimum of two. Staff doesn't have any real concerns with that. There are about 4 engineering standards that they're looking for waivers from. Shannon Smith has taken a look at those and is generally comfortable with them, but we need to work on the language to make sure that we're all copacetic with that. So.
Call last Wednesday or Thursday with Shannon, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement on the engineering standards that we needed waivers on.
How does everybody feel about letting Shannon handle any engineering waivers?
How does she feel about it?
Hear an explanation and opportunity to ask Shannon questions as this gets closer. I'm not comfortable.
They would be spelled out in the development agreement, but we would not recommend anything that didn't have her recommendation, at least her approval of it. So
I'd like to see him before I agree to that. And he may have the opportunity to ask Shannon questions and have her give us a presentation on them. I wouldn't want to see him for the first time in the development agreement.
Yeah, and I agree about a matrix, like, and I certainly appreciate, like, it's got a pencil, right? Like, we need housing. You've got to have this offset need, you know, I can see where you might need some market rates to make the deal work. And yeah, I want to be sensitive to construction costs going up, borrowing costs going up, and things have changed since this started.
Yeah, no, things have changed significantly since the beginning of the year, and right, we want to find a place that works for both of us here. And, you know, I think we were under the impression, kind of similar to what Todd alluded to earlier, that these rental restrictions would naturally impose a market cap on them. So I thought there was a brief discussion about that last time, and I thought we were headed down a similar path there. So we can think about some of these resale restrictions and kind of come back to you guys and come to an agreement.
See, I agree that I was in your camp on this one until it came out that you don't necessarily have to rent them. That's where this thing gets sort of off the road. So that's the. And then the final thing is the non-conforming structures provision.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And then we'll let, yeah.
I thought we were done.
Almost.
Take and wait, huh?
It sounds like we need to talk process though, because we're set to have the hearing on November 8th.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
Well, then we need to.
Yeah.
No. Understood, but we've got to figure out, are you bringing this conversation back as a work session then?
I think we're gonna have to, because Dick doesn't want to see it first time in the development
Yeah,
agreement,
no.
wants to talk about stuff, and
I mean,
there's
there's
a lot
too
of.
many unknowns at this point for us to go to development agreement. I think we need another work session on this thing.
Issues around posting for annexation that we're trying to
I
follow
see.
some requirements for annexation posting, and I don't know what this does to that. So
I think we're okay if we bring this discussion back at the same night of the eligibility hearing, which does not bind you to anything in the development agreement. We may then need to delay the annexation and development agreement. So I think we're okay.
Fair enough. Okay.
We good with the non-conforming exception that,
I'm not.
no?
I mean, I don't want to do that to our workforce housing. Is to not have to give them a waiver for 30 years on the non-conforming ordinance.
Okay.
And a lot of waivers here.
So Mark.
I mean, you buy insurance for that stuff. We all buy that insurance. I don't know why that we wouldn't.
So Mark, what they're asking for is if it burns down to the ground in 30 years, they would-
29
or
years.
29 years, they would get to rebuild it
As is.
as is.
Yeah, not
Exactly.
follow current code.
I mean, they could always have the option, at least per our code now, to request that from the planning commission, but it's not guaranteed.
Yeah. Oh,
I'd like to give that to everybody in town, honestly. How's everybody feel about this?
I think we should be consistent with what we have in the code.
Jay?
I'd like to hear some other comments.
I'm sorry, I just feel that I need to fairly set that this wasn't just a BGV request. I kind of thought maybe this was in our interest because it's employee housing, that it would be different than some other sort of development. So, what it's worth.
I don't feel strongly either way.
I mean, that's the one of the things that we have discussed over the years. Like I said earlier, about how this influences town and what people own in town. So
It influences what, Eric?
well, this influences, I mean, the way the code's written right now, say the building Micasa's in burned to the ground. You can't build it the same way that it's built right now.
If it's more than 50%, you can, or less than 50.
Less than 50%. But if it burns to the ground, you cannot.
Gotcha.
And there is some, I don't like that in our code to begin with. And we have not, as a council, had this argument, but I've had this argument with other councils and other planning commissions about the fact that I don't think that is the way we should do business in the town, regardless of whether something is non-conforming or not. You know. So,
But in this case, if it were, you know, if you have X number of units burns out of the ground, they want the ability to be able to build the same non-conforming
no matter,
backup.
no matter what we've done since with the code going forward.
And I agree with Kirsten. Steph.
Since it's housing, but if it's an issue in our code, I'd rather not make exceptions and be more consistent in our code.
But
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm good with Kirsten's opinion.
I think that's more in favor of your opinion. Okay, give you guys enough to work on? Thank you.
Thanks.
You guys.
Okay, we're gonna rush into the open space master plan review.
5 minutes for that.
We take 5.
Way behind.
We take 2.
Fine.
You run on your own while they set up?
Ann said Ann's gonna be really fast.
Well, I don't know about that.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'll just be very brief. This has been a long time in coming and developing this open space and trails master plan, about 1.5 years into the process right now. At our September meeting with BOSAC, they recommended moving forward with the plan. And on October 17th, our Social Equity Advisory Commission also reviewed the plan and gave us some great feedback. Thank you, Carol, for that. And there's a couple of tiny minor tweaks yet to come on the access and inclusion of strategic goal number 3. But all in all, I think this has been a tremendous workload for BOSAC and staff to get to this point and find consensus. And so we are anxiously awaiting your feedback.
Okay, who wants to go first?
The BOSAC.
This is a long process, and I've never seen more commission participation on this than I have in anything in my recent recollection. I think all of us had to kind of make some sacrifices or kind of be flexible about what our intentions are and what our hopes for the results would be. I think this thing will function well. I think we can do it ourselves. This thing will function well if BOSAC staff with council input institutes a separate trails plan that can be a little bit more prescriptive about what we hope to see going forward. I mean, the bottom line about this stuff, we know what BOSAC is. We know what the open space philosophy is and how it was implemented and how it was conceived. And I think down the road, I think the future councils, future commissions are gonna need a reminder. So, yeah, I'm okay with this. I don't think it's perfect, but I don't know if we could ever get it perfect just because there's just so many things that we're looking for, that we all were looking for, that sometimes are different, or kind of maybe counter intentioned than each other. So in other words, I might want something, Rossi might want something, staff might want something, but I think we've reached a kind of a consensus of something that I can live with.
I mean, I really, and well said, Jeffrey, I appreciate, this thing's been tough. It's come a long way. And I really appreciate BOSAC and staff's hard work on it to get it to where it is. I agree it's not perfect and we probably need to do some more work with trails, some more prescriptive stuff. But I also think we learned some things about how we work with consultants going forward as well. So, but yeah, I agree with Jeffrey.
Todd?
Yeah, I think it's important to get it published and get to work on implementing it. And I like the idea of like that next layer of getting to prescriptive, whether it's on the sign piece or on the trail piece. And yeah, I think it's taken a lot of rework and a lot of thoughtful editing and yeah, lots of revisions, and certainly appreciate all the staff's time and BOSAC's time. And yeah, I think it's good to go and we'll continue to make it better.
Seeing where this was when, on the first draft, it has it's come a long way. I think that there is a place for this as a tool in the toolbox, and I look forward to seeing that implemented and then seeing where else we can build on that.
Great. I know we've all thanked staff and BOSAC, but this was a tremendous amount of work and it is significantly better than what was originally presented to us. As Dick said, this is absolutely a learning experience with how we use consultants and what type of guidance we give them. I think the document works well as that high level document. But again, it's a question of process and certain things. Looking at the access and inclusion goal, it is very high level. To Jeffrey mentioning that there'll be a more specific trails work plan. If that is truly one of our goals, access and inclusion, we need to take actionable steps and maybe look to our local sources, work with Mountain Dreamers, work with BOEC, really use our local experts and not let these just be words on papers. But I think what's going to make this even stronger is a trails work plan. And this document as it is a great communications tool and a high level framework. One minor edit on page 3, can we not number our destination management plan goals? We've talked about that a lot, just that they're not in any priority.
Not in any order. Okay.
And I'll just say one more thing for Eric closes. One of the problems I think with a consultant and any consultant, in some cases, a consultant knows as much or has an equal perspective of the goal as the community. But with this process, the collective knowledge of the commission, of the council, of the community is just so far reaching above what some folks come into town and look at a community and evaluate it. That's why I think the trails plan, we can use that knowledge, that historical knowledge and on the ground knowledge of our trail system and the hopes and dreams of BOSAC to come up to make this thing something that we not only can live with, but we're proud of.
I just don't agree with anybody's comments on this. I am so disappointed and not in the staff and not in the BOSAC, but in the consultant. We hired a consultant and paid a lot of money for something that's going to sit on the shelf and do absolutely zero for this town. This is a complete waste and did nothing that we asked for. You know, at the start of this thing, there were two things that I wanted out of this. I wanted a signage package and I wanted a trails plan because we were arguing about where some trails went, like the Mila Rose. None of that exists in a plan that we just paid a lot of money for. And there are errors in this thing that I know Bobby has spent hours going through. There are still errors in this thing that through one reading, for instance, under the strategic goals where the little pictures are on page 8, there is access and inclusion. And for the only time in this entire thing, open space and trails is referred to as BOST instead of OST. Now, how the consultant allowed this to get to this point without seeing that error is beyond me. If you go to page, I'm going to make this short. I was so frustrated reading this and the lack of things like signage, like on system-wide connectivity. One of the problems with our connectivity is our signage plan doesn't work right. Why they didn't write that in there when I personally mentioned signage in those first meetings a dozen times. If you go to page, I'm sorry. Oh, if you go to page number 36, this entire part is on trail accent, but there's a thing about parking solutions that I don't think refers to trail access. So I don't really know. This is to improve parking, including partnering with Breck Ski Resort. I don't know if this thing just ended up in the wrong place due to formatting, but if you could look at that and see if it actually belongs there, that just seems, it seems in the wrong place to me. I may be reading it wrong and that could be. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is not what I thought any of us were getting, what we were working towards. And I knew I knew it was difficult at the BOSAC level. And I will say again, I completely blame the consultant. There's also, you know, we talk about not being specific. I don't understand why we're mentioning Summit County is launching a transit to trails program. Why is that in here? We don't mention any other program except for a county program that may or may not be launched that doesn't get to any of our stuff anyway. So anyway, I'm really bummed and I wish this had gone differently. And I hope that BOSAC will now work on a specific trails and signage plan and we can forget about this thing. And that's my true opinion on it. And I'm sorry that it's harsh, but sorry. That's just how I feel. So thanks. All right,
Would it
flood.
make any sense to implement some of the, have the staff work on implementing some of these and making these corrections and kind of cleaning things up, or do you?
Yeah, but you know what? This is so vanilla. And so it's just so like, this is like you could find this in a book on how to make a master plan for anything. And the difference between the way DTJ did this and our consultants did the sustainable brick, where they came in and listened to the things that we said to them and implemented them. That's probably why I'm so frustrated. First of all, open space and trails is near and dear to my heart, as you know, and Ted, now we're going to work with something that there's nothing new in here, and it's really, I'll tell you what, I would have a hard time hiring DTJ for any other job in this town while I'm sitting in this chair. Thank you. Flood risk mapping update.
We can have supper.
Quickly. Has initiated a project, this mic's on and off, to countywide to update some flood maps. The scope in the town of Breckenridge has gotten smaller. They're going to look at the McCain project that the town just did. So they'll just adopt our new mapping there. And then Middle and North Barton Gulch are the scope within the town. We do need to enter a memorandum of agreement. So we want to make sure council is aware of the project and agrees with moving forward with our support.
Can't really say no, right? I mean,
We can.
it's like the Excel thing, though. You can, but you really can't.
We want up-to-date flood risk mapping.
Any questions? There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Adjourn until 7 o'clock. 2020.
Sorry.
Order the town council meeting for October 25th, 2022. It is 7 PM. Roll call, please.
Ms. Owens. Mr. Carlton.
Here.
Mr. Bergeron. Ms. Sade. Mr. Beckerman.
Present.
Mr. Rankin.
Here.
Mayor Mamula.
We have approval of the minutes for October 11th, 2022. Any changes, corrections, deletions, additions? Minutes stand as presented. Is there any difference to the agenda this evening, Rick?
Yes, under planning matters, after planning commission decisions, we'd like to add a second item that would be planning commission appointments.
All right, and with that change, the agenda is accepted. Yeah.
I just said hello to
We're
Wish.
gonna send them that way.
Yeah. Okay, we have communications to council. First is public comment. These are non-agenda items only, 3-minute time limit, please. Sir. Please stand at the microphone, tell us your name, and you got 3 minutes to say whatever you'd like.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council regarding Tyra Summit Housing Complexes, short-term rental classification. My name is Craig Lauer. I'm a resident of Edwardsville, Illinois.
Spell your last name.
Louer.
Thank you, Craig.
CRAIG. We first visited Breckenridge in 1981. After numerous trips, we bought property here in 2001 at Tyra Riverbend. We sold that and bought property in Tyra Summit, townhome in Tyra Summit at 900 4 O'Clock Road in 2015. I am currently the Vice President of our Homeowners Association. I'm speaking to you on behalf of our Homeowners Association. Tyra Summits is 41 properties housed in 4 buildings located in between 4 O'Clock Ski Run and 4 O'Clock Road, addressed from 800 to 905 4 O'Clock Road. Development is 2 large buildings, Building A and Building B, which houses 18 owners in each, a common pool and spa building, and 5 attached townhomes. We feel our designation as a Zone 3 property is inconsistent with our current and past use and our original development as part of a master plan for the Tyra properties along 4 O'Clock Ski Run. We would ask for you to reconsider our designation and include us as a short-term rental Zone 1 designation. Currently, all of our owners except one rent their property on short-term basis when they are not using them themselves. To the best of our knowledge, this has been the case since their construction in the 1980s as part of a master plan developed by Louis Alonso. I understand that Mr. Alonso developed 4 Tyra properties along or across the street from 4 O'Clock Ski Run that could be accessed by Snowflake, that could access Snowflake Lift and become ski in, ski out properties. Over the years, several common spaces in our complex have been abandoned or changed according to the needs of our rental managers, our property managers, such as a check-in office in the spa building was abandoned, a common laundry facility in the Building A garage, a workforce apartment in the Building A garage, and a suite of offices on the 2nd floor of Building A, which have since been converted to the units and the fire doors so into units, and the fire doors remain. We feel that all of these speak to the original plan for Tyra Summit Complex to be a ski in and ski out short-term rental development, not a residential or family development. We are the only Tyra property not included in Zone 1. Tyra 2, Tyra Riverbend, and Tyra Mountaineer are all included in the short-term rental zone. We feel that because of our current use, original intended use, and the ski in, ski out location, we are the type of property that should be best included in the short-term rental zone and not the Zone 3 family zone. I thank you for your time. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in public wish to comment this evening? No, with that, public comment is closed. Breck Tourism Office update, Mr. Wachowski.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to go through a few numbers looking at lodging occupancy, how we did in Breckenridge, as well as against Destinmetrics. Before I get started, just want to remind everybody, we have our winter preview this Thursday, right here in this building, in this room. Starts at 8 o'clock breakfast, 8:30 will be the actual presentation. We are doing hybrid as well as in person. So you can catch it both ways. It will be recorded and forwarded on. Let's see, some summer numbers. Nights wise, year over year, right now we're down about 7% year over year. And this is looking at it as of September 30th, 2022. Give you an idea, Destinmetrics, they were down 4.4% year over year during that same period. So we're flowing very comparably to what the industry is doing. Average daily rate, or ADR as we call it, is 1% above what it was last summer at $219. ADR for the Destinmetrics industry is up 5% year over year. ADR is $375 a night compared to our $219. Give you an idea.
Would you say 370?
$375. And summer season, just for those that may not remember, that's May through October. RevPAR is down 10% year over year at $72 this year. With Destinmetrics Group down 1%, their RevPAR is $169 a night. So give you an idea, even though ADRs may be going up, it's very consistent across the industry, and Breckenridge is very much in the affordable range, as well as easy access. Let's see, during the winter timeframe, again, this is numbers are November through March. We do not have April at this point in time. They just showed up on the on the October 15th daily, but on the monthly aggregates, we do not have April. So November through March, nights in Breckenridge down 4%, DMX also down 4% year over year. Our ADR is plus 14%. Same thing with Destinmetrics, also up 14% year over year. Not a bad number when we consider inflation. Realistically, it's a couple points, if that, right? But ADR comparison, 473 for us, 661 on the DMX land. RevPAR up 8 here, up 11 on Destinmetrics. We're looking at $95 versus $165 right now. Realize ADR numbers will change. RevPAR will only go up as the season goes along. So that gives you an idea, kind of from a seasonal standpoint. Probably top of mind is Christmas and the Christmas holiday. I ran some numbers on nights for the Christmas holiday, December 16th through January 7th. In the winter preview, I'll tell you a little bit more about why I extended out to January 7th, but it has to do with how Christmas lands on a Sunday this year. Let's see, nights on the books, we are down 14% year over year. Okay. And give you an idea, at this time, historically, we have about 62% of this inventory booked. Does that make sense? So if we had 100 nights, we got 62 on the books right now historically. So we're down about 14 points. So we got a lot of room to make up. We believe that we will, but it's going to be a tough road coming ahead. When I look at demand year over just the past few weeks in October, it's not pacing the way it has in years past. Give you an idea, for the same time period, Destinmetrics nights are down 9% year over year. Relatively kind of the same. Think about it this way. We measure close to 3,000 units. Destinmetrics is measuring close to 15,000 units of available inventory. So when we compare 9% versus our 14%, there's probably more math than what I can do in my head right now, but you get an idea. The trends are similar, and that's what I look for a lot, is the trends and patterns. All right. Now, if I just look at December 26th to Jan 1, which when you see the daily report is probably what scares most people right now, 16% down on nights year over year. And then the Decimetrics land also down 13%. So what we're seeing is definitely not a Breckenridge issue. It is definitely what's happening in the industry, especially in the mountain industry, that we get to look on Decimetrics. I'll answer any questions.
Hey, Wish, have you related any of these numbers to 2019?
Not the Christmas stuff. I just ran out of time today kind of thing, but I will be. Just so you guys get an idea, when we look at comparisons for the winter season, we will look at last year, of course, because we always do. And then we're going to compare it to 18-19, which was the last full year before any pandemic. If you recall, 19-20, March was cut in half. We don't have a good comparison. We know the reservations the year after that, and then we know what happened last year kind of thing. So that's the number we're going to keep measuring against, because that was the last full year that we looked at. So, yes, sir.
Bill, how did summer compare to 19? We were up, right?
Yes. We were, I want to say it was around 4 or 5%, if I remember right, Dick, but I've run so many numbers in the last 12 hours. I don't remember. We got presentation tomorrow and then also Thursday as well too. So forgive me, but I know we were ahead of 19 by a little bit.
Wish, and I could be totally wrong on this, but it seems like any number, like say, given, say, Christmas, any, you know, if it's down X amount, 14%, 7%, you know, that translates to be less bodies sleeping here, but the people that are here are generally going to get better service, a better experience, quicker reservations, and a little bit more user-friendly, you know, Breckenridge experience. Does that trend, I mean, is that something we even consider? I mean, or we stick strictly in numbers evaluation of how we're doing?
Well, we always measure the NPS scores on our intercept surveys.
Okay.
So that's always been a concern. We saw a big drop off last winter.
Yeah.
But then summertime, we beat year over year numbers. And even those got questioned for a couple different reasons. But I look at it as being very important from a net promoter standpoint. You know, I think the best example that I give, because I won't argue with your points, but best example I'd give is Oktoberfest this past summer. And I don't want to give away a lot because we'll be talking about this more and more, but Oktoberfest, we're there, great crowds Friday, Sunday, right? Probably matched historical Saturdays in the past, et cetera. Saturday was very, very busy, but the long lines were what we got hammered on. And so in a way, that's really not a bad thing because one, police didn't have to deal with a lot more under the influence individuals. You know, I think it was a lot more calmer exit out of the event, a lot better cleanup and so forth. And then if people complain about the crowds and the long lines, will we have fewer people on Saturday? Will they disperse to other days? Will it make it long-term a better event? So I think there's some merit to it. Some would argue that Aspen purposely has high ADRs just to keep fewer people there, to keep those crowds down as well too. I'm not sure anybody will necessarily admit it, but it sure looks like it when you look at their data and listen to some of the industry news.
Will we see ADRs come down as we get closer
Probably.
for some infill into some of those dates?
Probably. The hard part to answer that, Eric, is I do a lodging roundtable every week. For about the last month or so, a lot of the properties that manage larger homes are seeing their properties moving slower this year than before. But contradictory to that, no surprise, the high-end product is selling, the lower end is not selling as much. So the money is traveling, the middle money, not as much. Just kind of a good way to describe it.
So ADR on some of those may come down then.
It may. It's always hard to tell because I don't get to see the units. Historically, as we went through the season, ADRs have gone down. Last winter, ADRs kept going up almost all season long, which was something I hadn't seen in 21 years.
Fair enough. Okay. Other questions for Wish?
Bill, in the summer, we saw people book closer in. Is that what you think is going to happen in the winter, that people are just waiting and waiting and waiting, maybe for that airline ticket to come down, or looking for a deal like we saw?
All of the above, right? You know, because Yes, we historically have relied on more last minute bookings than probably most of our colleagues in the industry or our competitors in the industry. And it's inherent because of our location. I will say this, when I looked at the October 15th report, I saw a substantial pace for spring break, meaning March 7th through almost April 7th, was much better this year than what it was last year. And this is happening way earlier. So it's kind of weird. We expect Christmas to start filling in a little bit later, but for some reason, spring break is taken off in October. The kind of growth that I saw year over year in that first 15 days of October, I usually would see maybe in December or January. Good luck in Vegas. Right?
Other questions? Wish, thank you.
Welcome.
See you on Thursday. All right, we have second reading of Council Bill number 33, Series 2022. This is a bill for an ordinance amending the municipal code pertaining to subdivision regulations as applicable to master plans. Chris.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight for your consideration on second reading is a bill to amend the subdivision code, section 9-2-4-5, which regulates lot dimensions and standards. This change will allow greater flexibility in the shape and dimensions of lots where a vested master plan displays conceptual lot lines and the land use, or if the land use of the parcel would be open space. I'd be happy to answer any questions. There are no changes from first reading at the bill presented tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions of staff? Anyone in the public wish to comment on the second reading of Council Bill number 33? Public hearing is closed. Is there a motion, Jeffrey?
On second reading, I move we pass Council Bill number 33, Series 2022, the title which has been read into the record.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the council? No, roll call, please.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mr. Carlton,
Yes.
Mr. Beckerman,
Yes.
Ms. Sade. Yes. Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
Mayor Mamula.
Yes. We have the first reading, Council Bill number 34, Series 2022. This is an ordinance concerning a for-rent workforce housing project, and in connection therewith authorizing the project, approving the conveyance of property, and the execution and delivery of a deed, a site lease, a lease, purchase agreement, and other documents.
Yes, this is
Oh,
an
Lori.
ordinance that authorizes multiple documents that are associated with the certificate of participation financing process that we are trying to use for the Justice Center project. As you recall, Justice Center is a collaboration with Summit County for 52 apartments. We are hoping to issue the COP in 2022 because we're going to start incurring some expenses relative to this project. And, based on interest rates and the market, we can set the final amount of the COP and the terms of the loan 20 years prior to issuance, which we hope to happen in December.
Thank you, Lori. Questions for staff? Anyone in the audience wish to comment on this first reading this evening? Yeah, public hearing is closed. Is there a motion?
On first reading, we pass Council Bill number 34, Series 2022, the title which has been read into the record.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Sade. Yes. Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mr. Carlton,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
Mr. Beckerman, Mayor Mamula.
Yes, we have the resolution number 19, Series 2022. It's a resolution adopting the Town of Breckenridge Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Guidelines. It's the town's annexation plan pursuant to Section 31-12-105, parentheses 1, parentheses E, CRS.
Afternoon, Mayor, or good evening. good
Mr.
Mayor and
Truckee.
Council. So Colorado statutes require that an annexation plan be adopted by each municipality that wishes to annex land. And this would adopt our comprehensive plan along with the land use guidelines to serve as our annexation plan.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions?
No, this is housekeeping.
He says that stuff just for you. You know that. Anyone in the public wish to comment on the resolution adopting our annexation plan? No, public hearing is closed. Is there a motion?
I move we pass resolution number 19, series 2022, the title which has been read into the record.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Beckerman.
Yes.
Ms. Sade. Yes. Mr. Bergeron. Mr. Rankin.
Yes.
Mr. Carlton.
Yes.
Mayor Mamula.
Yes. Report of the town manager and staff. Rick, what do you got?
Nothing other than I will be out of town for a few days, so Shannon will be acting. I'll be returning on Tuesday.
You notice how he's getting out of town right for coffee talk.
Yeah.
Out of town for Halloween.
Oh, is that what it really is? Oh, your house is gonna get TP'd and egged. All right, report of the mayor and council members. We had a cast meeting.
Do you want to do the planning commission
Planning
decisions? And then also.
Oh, did I
the
just
planning
jump over everything, didn't I? I didn't want to
Appointments.
do any of that stuff. That's why. Planning commission decisions. Are there any call-ups? Mr. Carlton?
Yes, I'd like to call up the master sign code, please.
Do the PL, yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to call up the Brexkey area master sign plan, multiple addresses, PL dash 2022 dash 0439.
There is a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Beckerman.
Yes.
Bergeron.
Yes.
Ms. Sade.
Yes.
Mr. Carlton.
Yes.
Mr. Rankin.
Yes.
Mayor Mamula.
Yes. All right, we got a call up. Planning commission appointments. We have 5 on the ballot. Does anybody want to discuss this, or we have 3 current and 2 new applicants.
Oh, yeah.
If you filled out your ballots, pass them down.
I will say we have amazing talented applicants, some amazing and talented applicants.
You weren't an applicant.
No, I'm not amazing nor talented.
I think you're both.
Dim lighting, I'm pretty hot. If you have cataracts.
Like 3 in the morning lighting.
What's that?
So receiving 6 votes were Alan Fector, Mike Giller, Mark Leese, and Susan Proper.
All right. You know, and Mark, will you let everybody know? Thank
Need
you.
a motion to have those appointed.
We ready to move?
Yeah, do it, man.
I move we appoint the following 4 community members to the Breckenridge Planning Commission, each to a four-year term, starting in November 22. The people are Alan Fector, Mike Giller, Mark Lees, and Susan Proper.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Carlton.
Yes.
Mr. Beckerman.
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
Mr. Rankin.
Yes.
Ms. Sade.
Yes.
Mayor Mamula.
Yes. All right. Did you say 4-wheeled term? 'Cause that sounded- All right, now we can go to the report of the mayor and the council members. Cast in Glenwood, thank you to those of you who showed up. It was pretty fun. I thought the roundtable was better, is getting better as time goes on, as this sort of crew gets to, this group of people get to know each other. So thanks for being there. Thanks for.
Who's there from our team?
Carol, Miss Carol, and Mr. Rankin. Crankin, we've been
Rankin,
calling
Rankin?
him. Crankin, Rankin.
All right.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. He's number 9 now. He's in single digits.
Oh,
After tonight's performance, he really came through.
You're moving up now.
all right. Open space, you got anything to add to that?
No, they had a meeting earlier because of, I think, some sort of spring break for children.
Yeah.
And I was out of town, so I missed it. But, I'll probably never be welcome back there again.
I think it's called a ball break. but that's all right.
All break for children, sorry.
Not much to add from what Bill, we talked a lot about the numbers and we recapped Oktoberfest in a little more detail. I think that was about it.
Excellent. History,
We have not had a meeting.
creative arts,
There's a meeting this week.
events. Oh, Kelly's not around. Anything to add to events?
No, we haven't had a meeting since your last meeting.
Childcare.
Recapped our last meeting and then the minutes, which did a heck of a lot better job than I did, are in the packet for tonight.
Excellent. Workforce housing. Anything to add?
Nothing to add. Jumping back to BCA real quick. Dick and I are out for Thursday's meeting. Can anybody cover?
What was that?
Really good question.
I think it's at
Like 2.
I'm
two,
done.
it is at 2:00 at Breck Town Hall, lower conference level.
I can do that.
Thank you. I
Thanks.
owe you.
Big time.
And social equity.
Minutes were in the packet. Just the commissioners are doing a great job. Nothing else to add.
That's great to hear. Other matters.
I got a quick question. Down the road, are we is it a possibility to reevaluate some of these just specific properties in different zones? Like that, the comment?
Well, yes, you can change legislation anytime, but I think that we really should wait. And I mean, to open that again now just seems like a bad idea, but that's not legal advice.
I just want to, what the process, okay.
Jeffrey, we kind of talked, I know in the committee, and we talked and everything about, let's give it a year.
Okay,
And then at the beginning, at next year, we'll revisit after we give it a year.
that was a much kinder way of saying it than Kirsten did.
Then no.
Yeah, then no, that was, thank you. I think she's still ticked off about my Titleist comment.
That got carved out. That's sort of weird.
It's up on the right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Mark reminded me that for the record, can we clarify that we're doing you want the call-up hearing in 2 weeks? The code says you'll affix the date for the call-up.
It says next meeting unless we have a reason to. It says unless we go to have a different time.
Here's something else you need to do.
Oh, okay.
Good with 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Looks good.
What's that date?
November 8th.
November 8th.
Oh, that's election. Oh.
Well, and that's
Seriously?
also in Trout to be.
I mean, it is
my birthday.
it's a
meeting,
very
too.
busy meeting, just so you, if you
Oh.
want to take that into consideration.
Well, they have to get
Probably
their,
needs to know.
they have to
this,
get their
though, right?
stuff done, I'm sure.
Yeah. Do we want to start earlier?
Because the next one's Thanksgiving week.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Do we want to start a little earlier on the 8th to account for that?
Well, the call-up's at night.
Well, it's
so,
a night no matter what.
yeah.
Oh, I wanted to be home watching the election results.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
lunar eclipse.
Wow, all kinds of
How
stuff.
about that?
Yeah.
Way to go, Dick.
I don't know. how
Way to go.
That's my buddy Dickie Finger's birthday.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Called for the 8th. Other matters, other than everybody being mad at Sticky Fingers over here now. Other matters, other matters, other matters, going once, going twice. Get it.